Chapter 41. Campus Forum and Artificial Intelligence. Lu Sen wanted to design a public platform that could quickly publish messages and get real-time feedback. This type of internet interaction had already been born in the Muggle world, but it was still a blue ocean in the wizarding world. Wizards have not yet realized how powerful such an instant feedback system and interactive experience are. As an initial trial product, Lu Sen's first thought was to set up a forum. But the wizarding world does not have the internet or computers that can process massive amounts of information, so this problem has yet to be solved. However, basic functions can still be realized, such as voting, liking, and leaving messages. Soon the first forum board was erected in front of the auditorium. It was a blackboard-sized device whose content was synchronized in real time with 4 smaller forum boards located in the common lounges of the 4 colleges. The little wizards are full of enthusiasm for such new things, and the forum board is always crowded with people every day. In addition to R&D personnel Lu Sen, the Weasley twins and Cedric, Percy has also been appointed as a back-end administrator and is responsible for reviewing the submissions and information releases of the young wizards. Ron initially complained about his annoying brother being the administrator, but after a few days he found that Percy had to review a large number of articles every day, stare at the forum board for a long time, and delete naughty and inappropriate messages from time to time, so Ron stopped saying anything. This job is indeed suitable for Percy. Although he is always arrogant when he is a supervisor, he is very meticulous when handling paperwork. Seeing that Percy was working so hard, Lu Sen asked the twin brothers to take charge of the purchasing section, record the purchase messages under the Sanley clothing advertising page, and confirm the orders with the little wizards. When Dumbledore approved Lu Sen to establish the Hogwarts Forum, he never thought that it would be so effective. Not only is the news released accurately and efficiently, but the young wizards can also give direct feedback on the content. Now you don't need to post notices about major or minor events at Hogwarts, gossip, lost and found notices, or even course changes. Just notify the forum administrator. As the volume of business increased, the responsible Percy was the first to be overwhelmed. There were more and more people making troublesome comments, and he couldn't delete them all. In addition, the information that teachers and students wanted to post also had to be reviewed and uploaded. The workload was too heavy. Lu Sen was a little confused, he didn't expect these situations to happen. Fortunately, he has a foreign aide who is very good at this. After listening to all the questions carefully, Lupin couldn't help but recall the good times when he and several friends developed the Marauders map together during his school days. Lupin on the other side of the communicator thought for a moment and said, "Do you know what function the forum lacks now? Real name system. As long as the name of every little wizard who leaves a message is displayed, no one will dare to make trouble. Your workload will be greatly reduced." Lu Sen immediately said happily, "Remus. I knew you would find a way." Under the guidance of the veteran Lupin, Lu Sen excitedly wrote down a lot of related magic and production secrets. But what he didn't know was that Lupin sighed repeatedly after putting down the communicator. His best friends James Potter and Sirius Black were the main forces in the development of the Marauders map back then, but now he was the only one left in the group of 4. Soon, the Hogwarts Forum 2.0 was upgraded. Lu Sen was careful and hid the real name function first, and then sent a small forum board to Dumbledore and the deans of the 4 colleges. When the naughty little wizards were flooding the screen with random messages, Lu Sen quietly turned on the real name function. Suddenly, several keyboard warriors in the magic world were caught. And they were given a love education by teachers and classmates. After the real name system was introduced, the campus forum became much clearer, and even the Weasley twins' work became much easier. However, this function is really terrible compared with the internet of later Muggles. Lu Sen had to contact Lupin again to see if he could create a magic version of artificial intelligence on it to help the administrators maintain order and achieve more convenient operations. However, Lu Sen did not get the answer this time. The in-depth research and development of the Marauders map was led by Sirius and James. Lupin did not know how to make the magical creation more spiritual. He could extract memories, but he did not quite understand how to inject them into the forum board. So Lu Sen decided to ask Dumbledore if there was any way to make it happen. Lu Sen came to the principal's office to consult about how to implement the magic version of artificial intelligence. Dumbledore's answer was very magical, just inject thought. But Comrade Laudang made it sound like he could do it with his hands, but Lu Sen was confused. To extract a person's thoughts and give them to a dead object, he must at least be able to perform legilimency and memory extraction, right? But he didn't. Lu Sen suggested, why don't you put your thoughts into the forum? You can be the forum's intelligent administrator. Dumbledore shook his head and said, the forum is a new thing created by you, the new generation. If an old man like me manages it, the forum will lose its current vitality. Lu Sen thought about it and realized that this was indeed the truth, so he had to give up. But he was happy again, because this way he would have a legitimate excuse to learn legilimency and occlumency, right? Unfortunately, Dumbledore felt that Lu Sen was too young, and that he would be allowed to learn magic like legilimency only when he was in his senior year. Lu Sen said helplessly, how can I add the automatic management function to the forum if I don't know legilimency and a series of magic? Dumbledore looked at Lu Sen with deep eyes and said, simply extracting thoughts can indeed quickly copy part of one's own personality, but this behavior is very dangerous. Especially when it is placed where everyone can access it. Lu Sen frowned and said, you mean, this personality and the memories in it can be easily read and used by others? Dumbledore nodded and continued, even tampering. Since the extracted personality and memory are incomplete, they can be easily used by people with bad intentions. I know that the Hogwarts forum is just the beginning, and I have noticed the huge potential of this thing. So Lu Sen, you have to give it thoughts in a more secure way. Lu Sen was puzzled, besides extracting memories and instilling them into objects, what other methods are there? Dumbledore took off his half-moon glasses, turned around and looked at the bookcase behind him. You have so many wonderful ideas. I guess many of them come from Muggles, right? If it were Muggles, what would they do? Lu Sen frowned and said, they will develop a program, and then teach from 1 + 1 = a number, and then continue to increase the difficulty. At this point, Lu Sen's eyes suddenly lit up. Dumbledore smiled and said, see, many times people already have the answer in their hearts. But do Muggles really have such a thing? Lu Sen nodded and said, yes, artificial intelligence. But it will take many years for it to come out. Lu Sen looked at Dumbledore guiltily, he accidentally let the cat out of the bag. Dumbledore opened a can of candy as if nothing had happened, handed it to Lu Sen and said, just made by Honeydukes. It tastes great. Seeing that there was no abnormality on the other party's face, Lu Sen felt relieved. He ate a piece and found it too sweet, but Dumbledore looked very happy. At this time, the principal asked calmly, by the way, when did you discover your ability to predict the future? Lu Sen, ahem. Here comes the fatal question. How should I answer it? Waiting online. Chapter 42. Lu Sen was about to swallow the candy when he was frightened by Dumbledore's question and coughed twice. I thought to myself, oh no, I asked a fatal question. However, Dumbledore was not in a hurry and comforted them. Many young wizards with extraordinary talents try their best to hide themselves, but don't worry, this is Hogwarts, a place where young wizards can speak freely. No one will hurt you. Lu Sen retorted in his heart, what's wrong with the giant monster? What's wrong with Quirrell? But after thinking about it, I made up a story. When I was a kid, I would occasionally have a hunch about which stocks would make money, but it wasn't always accurate. Dumbledore encouraged, that's already amazing. In fact, the prophecies left by famous prophets cannot always come true. I happen to be very interested in prophecies. Do you have any interesting prophecies to share recently? As if knowing that Lu Sen was unwilling to reveal it, he added, we can add some fun. If you successfully predict something, I can prepare a reward for you based on the importance of the event. How about that? Lu Sen's eyes lit up and he said, then can you untie the wand? Dumbledore was silent for a moment, can you change it? Tisk. Then it would be okay to learn telepathy, right? Lu Sen said unhappily. Dumbledore rubbed his forehead, another one. Lu Sen said impatiently, this won't work, and that won't work either. Forget it, I'm going back to sleep. Bye. After walking a few steps, Lu Sen slowed down and waited for Dumbledore to call him. He walked a few more steps slowly, but still no movement. Lu Sen tried again, I'm really leaving. Finally, Lu Sen found out that the old ones are the wisest. Dumbledore didn't even call him back. Lu Sen closed the door, but Lao Deng still didn't say a word. Hey! My little hot temper. Then I'll ask again. When Lu Sen returned to the office, he told Dumbledore the two prophecies without saying a word. Hagrid was about to get what he wanted most, and that Harry was about to be in danger of his life. But old Deng blinked and said, these two don't count. I've already heard them say that. Lu Sen was immediately unhappy, but the principal said that if he didn't believe it, he could ask the two people and the principal would never lie to students. Haha, okay, okay. You're awesome. Let me think about it. Lu Sen paced back and forth in the principal's office, thinking about what else he could reveal. After a while, Lu Sen said mysteriously, "Your biggest enemy is making a comeback. Soon he will commit an unforgivable sin in the Forbidden Forest." When Dumbledore heard this, his pupils shrank immediately, and his whole body was like a sharp blade out of its sheath. This kind of intimidating power was only displayed for a moment, but it also frightened Lu Sen so much that his hair stood on end. "Anything else?" Dumbledore asked calmly. Lu Sen wanted to fool around a little more, since he knew all the major events in the next few years. But to be safe, he advised, "Principal, the prophecy is just a possibility in the timeline. If you choose to believe it, you can only follow the steps. If you don't believe it, there are countless possibilities." Dumbledore was surprised by Lu Sen's words. He asked, "What about you? Do you believe in your own prophecy?" Lu Sen didn't expect that he would be fooled by himself, but he still replied calmly, "I believe that what I saw is likely to happen, but I believe in myself more. I will be fully prepared to turn the bad results into what I want. If it is destined to be unchangeable, then I will forge my own path." There was a gleam in Dumbledore's eyes, and the wrinkles on his face seemed to have disappeared. After discussing the timeline, the multiverse, and the future, Lu Sen was very creative and told the other party about the beauty of the vast universe. He also said that wizards should join hands with muggles to create a technological magic civilization. How boring is the global village? In the future, we should explore the stars and the sea. Dumbledore listened to Lu Sen's story with a smile, his eyes shining from time to time. The next day, Lu Sen, inspired by Dumbledore, told Lupin and his father about his design concept. After some research, the two quickly produced a prototype device, but they were stumped as to what to use as the core. Lu Sen looked through a lot of information but found nothing. Faced with a complete blind spot in knowledge, Lu Sen decided to try his luck with the principal again. Then Dumbledore found a dusty gem from his personal collection and gave it to Lu Sen. From the outside, it looked like a piece of broken glass the size of a quail egg. If Lu Sen hadn't sensed the huge magical energy inside, he would have thought that old Deng was fooling him. Thus, a device that can carry the magic artificial intelligence was born. It looks like a more gorgeous communication badge, but with a pure and transparent gem inlaid on the top. After getting the host, Lu Sen started to worry again. He could use magic to create artificial intelligence, but he couldn't use legilimency. Lu Sen, who had no idea where to start for a few days, simply convinced himself, "Isn't magic just wishes come true? I'll just make up some magic." Lu Sen had already made several spare wands, but faced with such a challenge that required creating something out of nothing, he subconsciously took out the Thunder Wand. Although this rolling pin-shaped wand was sealed by Professor McGonagall, Lu Sen still felt at ease holding such a thick wand when he was thinking about problems or encountering troubles. After thinking carefully about my current idea, to put it simply, I need to make this communicator host generate intelligence. As this thought continued to deepen, and when his belief reached its peak, Lu Sen no longer hesitated, stood up and shouted, "Quickly open your wisdom." Lu Sen's highly concentrated spirit and energy mobilized the magic power in his body to the maximum extent, and a surging force gathered out. But the magic power encountered layers of obstacles when passing through the magic wand. The seal chain composed of ancient magic words inside instantly emitted a red light. The magic power rushed inside, trying to find an outlet for venting. Lu Sen tried his best to squeeze out the magic power in his body and continuously increase the output. Unfortunately, the seal was still better in the end. The magic power Lu Sen poured in was quickly exhausted. But at the last moment, an almost imperceptible faint lightning escaped from the tip of the wand and struck the gem. Lu Sen, who was sweating profusely, sighed. He forgot to change back to the spare wand. He just used his lightning wand. Has this failed? It feels like the magic has broken out of the seal a little bit. After waiting for a moment, Lu Sen tentatively said to the communicator host, "Hello." After waiting for a while, when he thought he had failed, a hi slowly appeared on the communicator. Lu Sen was suddenly extremely excited. He actually succeeded. Although this awareness is still very vague, Lu Sen feels that this is at least a good start. What follows is a long period of teaching, and Lu Sen has no idea about this. How about teaching it the multiplication table first? Chapter 43. The topic that the young wizards talk about the most recently is Quidditch, because the first Quidditch game of this semester is about to come. Harry has been training for a while as the Gryffindor team's secret weapon, and many people say he will lead Gryffindor to achieve good results. However, many people think that Harry is too young as a seeker, and he will fall badly in the game. Lu Sen of course scoffed at the latter statement, not only because he knew that Harry possessed an incredible talent, but also because of the new equipment he designed. Harry patted the clothes that looked like an Air Force flight suit and said, "Do I have to wear this to the competition, Lu Sen? It's a bit tight. This is an experimental model, the official version will be adjusted. Look at this smooth dragon skin fabric. It can effectively reduce air resistance. This helmet. It has a built-in bubble head curse effect. No matter how fast you fly, you won't feel short of breath. And more importantly, the safety factor is very high. For example." Lu Sen said this, and suddenly punched out. Immediately, the fist wind hit Harry's chest with a whistling sound. With a puff sound, starting from the place where Harry was hit, the dozen airbags in the interlayer of his clothes wrapped Harry into a big ball at an explosive speed. After the 2-meter diameter ball bounced a few times on the ground, the airbag slowly retracted. Harry, who had regained his freedom, stood up panting. He touched his body and said in shock, "This thing is horrible. It has such a strong force when it's propped up. I can't breathe when I'm stuck in the middle." Lu Sen patted his shoulder indifferently. The helmet has a built-in bubble head curse effect. It can ensure that you can breathe smoothly at any time. Ron always accompanies Harry in Quidditch training, and this time is no exception. He ran up and said, "Cool. This Quidditch uniform is awesome. I bet the quaffle can't even hurt the players. But Lu Sen, your punches are getting stronger and stronger. I could hear the sound of you hitting Harry from a long distance away." While checking Harry's protective suit, Lu Sen said with a smile, "Want to learn? I'll teach you." A few days later on Saturday, Harry's first Quidditch game began. Gryffindor's opponent is the Slytherin team, which has won the championship for several years in a row. The players of the other team are all tall and strong, while the Gryffindor players are much thinner in comparison. The audience seats were located on a high wooden tower, and Lu Sen was pulled over by Ron early in the morning to grab a front row seat. Almost every little wizard around held a small colorful flag with exquisite college emblems printed on it. The flags were cast with exquisite magic, and the mascots of their respective colleges would tumble and jump as the flags were waved. This is all thanks to the Weasley twins, who are always able to keenly spot business opportunities. They sent an application to the company a week before the competition and prepared flags and banners of all sizes in advance for sale. This made this year's competition full of atmosphere. The little wizards were also excited and enthusiastic. Commentator Lee Jordan loudly explained in the stands, "Ladies and gentlemen, this semester's Hogwarts Quidditch tournament is about to begin. Let us invite the teams to enter." As the players from the red and green teams entered the field, the stands suddenly erupted in cheers and applause. Lee Jordan continued, "By the way, I believe everyone has noticed the Gryffindor team's handsome flight suits, right? This flight suit is not only well made and novel in style, but the outer layer is completely sewn with dragon leather. The most important thing is that protective devices have been added inside." Professor McGonagall interrupted, "Jordan, commentate on the game. Jordan is a good friend of the twins. Even if Professor McGonagall punishes him, he will help his buddies finish the advertisement." He spoke quickly, "Professor, I have just one last word. Gryffindor's competition uniforms are exclusively sponsored by the Galaxy Group." "Professor, don't hit me. Okay, let the game begin." Lu Sen silently gave Li Qiadan a thumbs up, and then kept taking out peanuts, melon seeds, grilled fish fillets, potato chips, sweet potatoes, and spicy strips from his school bag. Of course, he was not a guest seller, but he was distributing delicious food to a few close friends. "How can you watch a game without snacks?" Hermione, who was worried about Harry's safety, kept looking at Lu Sen with contempt. Ron, on the other hand, was eating happily and stuffed a spicy strip into Hermione's mouth. Lu Sen was petrified on the spot. "Just borrow flowers to offer to Buddha? Just show off your love in front of me. Good, good, good." Lu Sen reached back into his backpack, took out a pack of triple BT spicy strips and shook it in front of Ron. When Ron saw the spicy strips in different packaging, his eyes lit up. He thought it was a flavor he had never tasted before, so he grabbed it with a smile. Soon, Lu Sen heard the two people's hissing and laughing exclamations. Lu Sen held back his laughter and calmly took out 2 bottles of Sprite and handed them over, saying caringly, "It's spicy, isn't it? Have a drink." Hermione looked puzzled, but Ron didn't think too much about it and drank it in one gulp. Then the unfortunate child suddenly widened his eyes and fanned his mouth hard with his hands. The thrill of Quidditch is 10 times more than that of football, basketball, and rugby combined. Lu Sen was so jealous, he also wanted to feed the girl. No, he also wanted to fly freely. The scene was extremely intense. At the beginning, Gryffindor's female player Angelina Johnson broke through the siege and won 10 points, but was soon caught up by Slytherin. Lee Jordan is truly a talented person. Not only can he explain the game at a very fast speed, but he also remembers to praise the female players despite Professor McGonagall's murderous gaze. Lu Sen feels that with this kid's eloquence, he will definitely, never lack a girlfriend in the future. Harry didn't do anything at the moment. He found the best position in the game high in the center of the stadium, watching the game while looking for the golden snitch. The little wizards would occasionally pick up their binoculars to look at the details, wishing they had an extra pair of eyes. The Slytherin players played very brutally, especially their captain Marcus Flint, who deliberately bumped into players many times within the first few minutes of the game and kept hitting the ball at the Gryffindor players. Harry once saw the snitch coming in, but was hit hard by the other party and lost track of him. Lu Sen thought of something and pointed the telescope at the Slytherin audience stand. According to the original plot, Quirrell would start cursing in a while, and Snape would desperately recite the antidote. Hermione mistakenly thought that Snape was the mastermind, and used magic to set his robe on fire. She accidentally interrupted Quirrell's spell and saved the tormented Harry. Under the telescope, Quirrell covered his mouth with both hands, staring at the competition field without blinking, looking frightened by the intensity of the competition. Lu Sen nodded and gave Chi Luo a score of 7 for his acting skills. "Look through the telescope down, then left and right? I'm taking the test? Where's Snape?" Lu Sen was stunned. "Where's my pharmacist? Such a big pharmacist!" Lu Sen's mind raced. What should he do? Who would Hermione burn later? If he didn't burn Snape, how could he interrupt Quirrell? Just as he worried about it, Harry's Nimbus 2000 suddenly began to tremble, moving up and down and left and right uncontrollably. The young wizards didn't understand and thought it was some kind of tactic. But soon, Harry's movements in the air became more and more dangerous. He seemed to be riding on the back of a mad bull and was about to be thrown out at any time. Everyone was worried about him, especially Hermione and Ron. Although Lu Sen didn't think that Harry, who was wearing a special protective suit, could be injured, he didn't want to put his friend in danger. Suddenly, Hermione put down the telescope and said to the two, "Found it. It's Snape. He's chanting a curse." "But why? He usually takes good care of Harry." "Lu Sen, why is Snape taking the blame again?" Chapter 44. Lu Sen and Ron looked in the direction Hermione pointed, and saw Snape standing in the open space under the opposite stands, muttering to himself, staring at Harry running around in the sky without blinking. Lu Sen was so angry that he had nowhere to say it, but then he thought, this seems to be his fault. If he didn't pretend to be a prophet, wouldn't Snape just watch the game in the stands? In a short while, the state of the Light Cycle 2000 has changed from a mad bull to a wild horse that has broken free from its reins. It flies all over the field and even does a 360-degree roller coaster spin. Hermione couldn't sit still anymore. She threw Ron down from the snack pile, got up and ran towards the stairs. Of course Lu Sen couldn't just sit there and wait for death, he had to find the real mastermind to cause trouble, otherwise Hermione's efforts would be in vain. While Ron and Neville were at a loss, Lu Sen and Hermione had already run to the Gryffindor stand one after the other. When going downstairs, Lu Sen really wanted Hermione to get out of the way, but the stairs were too narrow. It was not until he reached the ground that Lu Sen seized the opportunity to overtake Hermione. Under Hermione's puzzled gaze, Lu Sen left a sentence no time to explain, and sped away at the speed of a 100-meter sprinter. By the time Hermione panted and walked around half the field to the bottom of the Slytherin stand, Lu Sen had already reached the top and quietly went behind Quirrell, who was casting the curse. Hermione lurking behind Snape, "Where's Lu Sen? How come he disappeared when he ran so fast? It's unreliable. I have to do it myself. Harry, you have to hold on." The two of them, one above and one below, started to make trouble at the same time. Lu Sen subconsciously took out the thunder wand at first, but immediately put it back. After all, he couldn't chop people in front of so many people. And according to what Lu Sen knew, old Dumbledore had already arranged everything, and this was only the first year of the Harry development plan. There are still a lot of challenges waiting for Harry under the three-headed dog. I wonder if Dumbledore will be angry if he cuts Quirrell and Voldemort in half now. Lu Sen quickly weighed the pros and cons in his mind. Now he could only choose the spare wand, but he felt his pocket and was stunned. It was not in his pocket. He took it out when he was sharing snacks. After searching left and right, all he found were snacks and gold galleons. Finally, he unexpectedly found a super-enhanced version of the dung bomb that the twins had recently developed. The two men's biggest hobby is still making prank props. They often give their new products to Lu Sen for appreciation and try to persuade him to invest in them. Lu Sen gave a kind smile to the thing in his hand that he usually avoided. Not bad, I'll use you. He took a few steps back, held his breath, and swung the hidden weapon in his hand out. With a snap, the dung bomb activated in mid-air, turned into a sticky lump, and hit the back of Quirrell's head. Quirrell, who was concentrating on silently reciting the curse, was not the first to react. A certain unlucky parasite behind his brain was the first to be awakened by the stench from the sky. Hiss! Who hit me? Hey! What's that smell? Ugh! Is it shit? Quirrell! What's going on? Ugh! Quirrell was first startled by the sound of vomiting mixed with anger. Just as he was about to respond to his master in panic, an extremely foul smell came into his nose. The people sitting around him were also dizzy from the sudden stench. Everyone covered their noses and quickly moved away. Quirrell could no longer recite the curse. He looked around in confusion, not knowing where the smell came from. Master? How are you, Master? Quirrell called out in his heart, but poor Voldemort had already fainted from the smoke. Feeling the servant's call, he woke up with a start, but before he could say anything, he immediately felt the sticky stuff outside the gauze and the pervasive stench. Ugh! Fainted again. Master? Ugh! Why don't you speak? Are you okay? Ugh! Quirrell vomited again and again, unable to open his eyes. The stench was so thick that it became substantial. Grey-green mist rose from the back of his head. Quirrell became a walking source of pollution. The next second, he was also happily knocked out by the fumes. Lu Sen had already retreated to the bottom of the tower. Although he dodged quickly, he still imagined the fear of being dominated by the dung bomb. This is simply a biological weapon. As expected, Hermione used fire to burn clothes to distract Snape. Now she had finished setting the fire and was running back. Snape was anxiously reciting a spell to lift the curse on the stage, but unexpectedly his clothes caught fire. While he was jumping up and down to put out the flames, Lu Sen and Hermione reunited. I did it! Harry's curse is lifted! Hermione panted. The two of them moved away from the stand where Snape and Quirrell were, the cat behind a wooden shelf. Lu Sen retorted, I succeeded, okay. The curse was cast by Qi Luo. Look! Hermione looked in the direction of Lu Sen's finger. The smoke from the dung bomb was still coming out of the stands, and all the people watching the game had run away. She turned back to Lu Sen fiercely and said, What? Snape was the one who cast the curse. I saw him casting the curse with my own eyes. While the two were arguing, Harry had regained control of his broomstick and luckily found the trace of the golden snitch. He controlled the Nimbus 2000 to quickly approach the target, and the Slytherin Seeker also noticed Harry's movements and followed. The two pushed and shoved each other, competing fiercely in the air. Finally, when the golden snitch made a sharp turn, the Slytherin Seeker chose to slow down for fear of hitting the ground. Harry was very skilled and courageous. He pulled the broom handle hard and followed the cunning golden snitch closely. All the players stopped their movements and watched Harry's performance without blinking. At the last moment, he stood on the broom and reached out to catch the golden snitch. Amid everyone's exclamations, Harry fell off the broom. What Lu Sen didn't expect was that this scene was slightly different from what he remembered, because Harry fell from a high altitude. At least 20 meters above the ground. Snape's eyes were red with anger. He quickly drew out his wand and fired an instant levitation spell. But the distance was too far, the spell was still halfway through, and Harry was about to hit the ground. But at this moment, the protective suit on Harry's body activated instantly. The moment before landing, he was tightly wrapped by the airbag and became a 360-degree big ball with no dead angles. Dun! Dun! The hairy ball bounced twice on the ground before Snape's levitation spell hit it. After absorbing the impact of the fall, the protective suit automatically retracted, revealing Harry inside. He was hit by a levitation spell and became light, now flying in the air like a balloon. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but Snape noticed something was wrong. Harry seemed to have a blockage in his throat. He covered his neck with his hands, his face turned purple, and his feet kicked randomly in the air. Snape ran towards Harry quickly, and when he was below Harry, he waved his wand and lifted the levitation spell. Harry fell down and was caught by him. Fresh breath. A spell was cast on Harry, and instantly there was oxygen in his lungs. Harry, who had just taken a breath, still felt uncomfortable. He gathered his strength for a moment, then exerted force and vomited a small golden ball into his hand. It's the snitch. Harry caught the snitch. Gryffindor gets 150 points. Gryffindor wins. Following Lee Jordan's voice, the whole audience cheered. Harry looked around excitedly. This was the happiest moment of his life. People cheered for him, not because of his scar or his background, but because he won the game. He looked at Snape beside him. It was thanks to Snape that he saved him just now. Otherwise, he would have suffocated to death. Originally, the thief didn't swallow it very far in his throat, but the protective suit opened too quickly, and he was frightened and swallowed another section. Professor, thank you. You saved me. Harry said sincerely. Snape stared into Harry's green eyes and smiled, which was rare. He didn't care at all that Harry had defeated his house. Instead, he nodded and said, "Well flown, Harry." He reached out to touch Harry's head, but hesitated halfway. Harry then cooperated by lowering his head and putting his head into the other's hand. Unlike Snape's cold face, Harry felt warmth and security on it. Chapter 45. Hogwarts Castle is built between mountains, which makes the winter here even colder. The outside of the castle has long been covered in snow, and the surface of the Black Lake is completely frozen. Lu Sen insisted on doing boxing every day, and his body became stronger in the past few months. But the combination of wearing a sweater inside and a wizard robe outside still made him feel chilly, not to mention the little wizards who never exercised. The corridors were full of students wearing scarves and shivering as they trotted. Even a well-behaved student like Hermione secretly used magic to keep warm. She put a wisp of blue flame in a glass jar, and during breaks she, Harry, and Ron would secretly gather together to use this small fire cup to keep warm. Lu Sen was sour, crossed out, when he saw this scene, and stamped his feet in anger. "You three, please pay attention to the impact. No, I mean, we are wizards. It's just a cold winter, can't we wear a down jacket?" Of course Hermione knew about down jackets, but she felt that it would be a bit out of place if Muggle items like down jackets appeared in school, so she chose to deal with it in the traditional wizarding way. Ron asked with a puzzled look on his face, "What is a down jacket? Is it made of bird feathers like a mink coat?" Harry couldn't help laughing. He explained, "Of course not, it's stuffing feathers into the lining of clothes. I have one, although it's a little big. It was given to me by my cousin, but it's really warm." Ron's eyes suddenly lit up. Finally someone understood what it felt like to wear clothes thrown away by his brother. But he immediately thought of a question and frowned, "But how can feathers be used to make clothes? Their stems are so hard. They will poke through the fabric." Lu Sen knew the general method. Dense, down-proof fabrics had long been invented by Muggles, but traditional wizards still used traditional materials such as cotton, linen, silk, and camel hair to make clothes, so they did not make down jackets. Realizing that this was a blank market, Lu Sen immediately contacted Mrs. Weasley and introduced the cold-proof artifact down jackets. Thanks to the magic and convenience of magic, making down jackets, which is complicated for Muggles, is no problem for Sanley Clothing Company. Mrs. Weasley used a clever magic, and thousands of goose feathers automatically shook wildly, separating the hard stems from the soft down neatly and efficiently. Then the down formed dandelions in the air and automatically floated into the big bag. The hard stems jumped in a line to the trash can on the other side, and some naughty ones even performed a high diving and 2.5 somersaults in the air. The whole process was relaxing and comfortable, without a speck of dust. What gives Muggles even more headaches is the odor problem of duck and goose feathers, which is a matter of cleaning up. So from the time Lu Sen suggested making down jackets to the time Mrs. Weasley sent the samples, it only took 1 day. And that included the time it took for the owl to go back and forth. Lu Sen patted his warm and fluffy down jacket and couldn't help but sigh, Mrs. Weasley is so efficient. And, magic is so convenient. Subsequently, Sanley's down jackets began to be fully launched on the market. With the dual offensive of newspaper publicity and word of mouth from young wizards at Hogwarts, many wizards who were willing to accept new things began to rush to buy this warm and lightweight cold-proof artifact. However, some conservative old-fashioned people still insisted on wrapping themselves up in 3 layers of clothing. This is also reflected in the Academy. For example, very few Slytherin wizards buy down jackets. Malfoy also took the lead in resisting down jackets, saying that duck and goose feathers were garbage and not even used by servants. When students from other colleges put on down jackets and played happily outdoors, Malfoy and his friends were still shivering in the cold wind. Ironically, when he was still stubborn, his mother Narcissa sent him a thickened wizard robe. He was about to show off that the traditional wizard robe was also warm, but he found a 3L trademark hidden inside. Sanley's latest product, Retro Down Wizard Robe. Malfoy, should I wear it? Or should I wear it? Lu Sen was the first to show off his down jacket. He found that the Black Lake had been frozen as hard as a rock. He could have fun on the wide lake. So he suggested, Harry, Ron, Hermione, let's go ice skating. Harry, who was obsessed with Quidditch, said without hesitation, how can ice skating be as fun as flying a broom? Lu Sen, what's so fun about flying broomsticks? In winter, we should play ice sports. Lu Sen also wanted to ride a flying broom, but his talent was not in flying broom at all. Ron, but how can ice skating be as exciting as flying on a broomstick? Harry also echoed, yeah, the flying broom is faster. Lu Sen was immediately angry, so he said, haha. Let me show you how wizards skate. Lu Sen didn't know how wizards skated, so he went to Hagrid's basement angrily and built a sled with wood. Then he stuffed a flying broom into it with resentment. He used the broom as a power to pull the sled. Lu Sen was tinkering with it while thinking, is the flying broom hard to control? No problem. I can use it as an engine. Just focus on the output. Thus, the magic sled with a steering wheel, accelerator, brake, and reverse gear was born. Maybe it was because he felt safer without taking off, but Lu Sen drove the sled very well. He had a lot of fun with drifting, 360-degree turns, and high-speed sprints. The first ones to be attracted were of course the restless Weasley twins, who strongly suggested changing the sled into a double one. So Lu Sen helped them build a 2-person sled. The chase between the 2 sides attracted more people's attention. Even little wizards like Harry and Ron who have a special liking for flying couldn't help but join in. Of course, 2 sleighs were not enough, but there were not so many idle broomsticks to transform. After Cedric joined, the others decided to redesign the sleigh and apply the magic used to make magic carpets to it, so that the sleigh would be free from the restrictions of the broomsticks. After consulting his uncle, Lu Sen also contributed some object-controlling skills from the Chinese textbooks, and they quickly created an upgraded version, making racing even more fun. The play of several people attracted the attention of more little wizards, and thus a grand ice racing sport began. As senior wizards join in, the traditional sleds are no longer enough for them. Fire-breathing flying cars, 16-legged all-terrain vehicles, and ice cars suspended on the ice spewing cold air have all appeared. In the end, even Professor McGonagall and several other teachers were attracted and built a very exquisite sled for the little wizards to play on. This unique ice sport not only allowed the little wizards to indulge in their addiction to acceleration, but also allowed them to show their passion for magical transformation. So Lu Sen and Principal Dumbledore applied for the Galaxy Group to fully fund and host an official Hogwarts bobsleigh race. There is no age limit for contestants, and a team can consist of a maximum of 5 people. Without the aid of ready-made power sources such as broomsticks, the participating teams can only use simple materials such as iron, wood, ice, and ropes to make sleds on site. As long as the sled you make doesn't fly, any other way of driving is fine. During the competition, each team sends 2 representatives to drive the sled to complete the race. The Galaxy Group will carefully arrange the venue, and Lupin will lead the team personally. Various thrilling levels and traps will be added to the track. The competition will be held at the end of December, before Christmas. This unprecedented event not only made the young wizards feel novel, but also received a warm response after it was published in the newspaper. When there was still some time before the competition, all the hotels in Hogsmeade Village were booked. After seeing the promotion in the newspaper, many wizards planned to go to the scene in person to watch this new ice sport in Hogwarts. On a Saturday in mid-December, Lu Sen was adjusting the sled by the Black Lake when he saw an unexpected group of people. Dad! Mom! Uncle! Why are you here? Lu Sen asked in surprise. How is it? Did you miss me? Julie said while rubbing Lu Sen's hair hard. Lu Sen dodged calmly, took out the Weasley magic hairdresser from his pocket, skillfully adjusted it to the straightening mode, and after a few strokes he regained his spirits. He complained, I really wanted to do that. Seeing his mother's eyes narrowed, he quickly changed his words and said, I want to do it even more now. Hee hee. Lu Qiuzhong and Belle smiled at each other. This mother and son are always so happy. Are you here to watch the game? Lu Sen guessed. I guess so. After all, it's a big investment. I came to check out the situation and by the way see you. Belle joked while comparing Lu Sen's height, have you grown taller? Lu Sen's father had noticed it a long time ago, and he said happily, son, we are relieved to see you grow up healthily. You don't even know how many times your mother talks about you every day. As soon as Lu Qiuzhong finished speaking, he was frightened by Julie's cough and made a face. They chatted for a while, then Belle looked at his watch and said, it's almost time, we have to go to Hogsmeade, see you later. Lu Sen couldn't help but wonder, where are you going? Hogsmeade shouldn't be as lively as Diagon Alley, right? Only Honeydukes is quite famous, what else? The three of them looked at each other, and after a brief exchange of glances, Lu Qiuzhong said with a strange expression, I told you before that the people in Diagon Alley don't dare to sell real estate to us anymore. The prices they offer are getting more and more outrageous. Lu Sen had a bad feeling, and he thought of a possibility, then, what then? Julie patted her son and said, same old, congratulations. Lu Sen took 2 steps back, shocked and bewildered, and said, no way? If you can't buy it in Diagon Alley, you can buy it in Hogsmeade. Belle spread his hands and smiled, it's not that Diagon Alley is unaffordable, but Hogsmeade is more cost-effective. You see, this place is guarding Hogwarts, which is very helpful for product promotion. And it's close to you. Lu Sen sighed, feeling both happy and worried. It was as if he had finally gotten into college and thought he could just enjoy his time as it pleased without anyone caring about him, but ended up having his parents come over to accompany him. Lu Sen, with his mouth twitching, tried hard to calm himself down and told himself that Hogwarts was a boarding school anyway, so what was there to be afraid of? Okay, well, that's good. Where is the location? Lu Sen asked with a forced smile. Julie thought for a moment and said, next to the Shrieking Shack, next to Honeydukes, not far from the Quill Shop, near the train station at the entrance to the village, and opposite the Owl Post Office. Lu Sen was a little confused. He asked in confusion, don't bully me for not having been to Hogsmeade. The ones you mentioned are not even next to each other. Where did you buy them? Wait. How many did you buy? Degree. Chapter 46. The Galaxy Group's construction efficiency was amazing, with everything set up a week before the game. The Black Lake has completely changed. The flat ice surface has been reshaped, replaced by a winding and undulating track and dazzling levels. No Muggle rally track can compare to this. Lu Sen's imagination was full, and he told Lupin and others many game scenes he had played in his previous life, and everyone was amazed. But when it came to the actual arrangement, Lupin stopped him outside and told him that if he participated too much in the scene design, he would lose the qualification for the competition. Lu Sen had no choice but to wait patiently and look forward to the start of the competition with his friends. During this period of time, whether in the corridor or the common room, the hot topic of discussion among all the young wizards was the sleigh race. For the first time, their enthusiasm was attracted by something other than Quidditch. Almost everyone began to pay attention to the venue on the Black Lake. During breaks, they would run to the corridors or windows where they could see the Black Lake to discuss the function of the newly built track and guess what kind of mechanisms would be added. The young wizards who registered for the competition used all their spare time to go to the library to look up information and ask questions to professors. As the saying goes, interest is the best teacher. Magic transformation and enchantment techniques, which almost no one paid attention to before, have now become hot topics. Ravenclaw, which is full of top students, is now the most popular among the 4 houses. Each of them can come up with several ideas for sled modification or related magic. Many young wizards who were eager for the competition but did not know how to transform began to compete to make friends with their Ravenclaw classmates and rushed to form a team with them. Headmaster Dumbledore was particularly pleased to see the young wizards from different colleges making friends with each other, abandoning their college factions, and enthusiastically discussing magic and exchanging techniques. He even smiled to the point where wrinkles appeared on his face. The Weasley twins were very confident in their transformation skills, but in order to compete for the championship, they still contacted Mr. Weasley using the communicator and asked him for some experience in transforming items. Mr. Weasley is a master of transformation. As we all know, his car can fly and become invisible. He also contributed to the transformation of Sanley Company's modern sewing machines. From their mysterious actions and the confident smiles on their faces, it is not difficult to see that Mr. Weasley must have taught them a lot of good things. When signing up, the Weasley twins formed a group of 2, building and driving their own sled. Harry, Ron, and Hermione formed a group of 3, with Hermione responsible for building the sled and Harry driving. Cedric led a group of several Hufflepuff classmates. Lucien brought Neville to form a group. In the end, the number of teams that signed up reached 150. The young wizards actually understood that participation is important. You have to know that there are only a little over 1,000 students in the entire Hogwarts. However, Lucien thinks that the preliminaries may screen out most of the teams. Many young wizards signed up just for the souvenirs. And even fewer can actually build a competition sled. When Hermione first learned about the number of participants, she was a little worried that so many teams would cause waste of resources and environmental pollution. But after consulting Professor McGonagall, I learned that there is no environmentalism in the wizarding world, and there is no need to worry about wood waste. If necessary, wizards can turn the plains into lush forests overnight. Miss Know-It-All, having put her concerns aside, agreed to join Harry and Ron's team. On the day of the competition, all major newspapers sent reporters to cover the event, and the counter-tune even included a live broadcast function for the first time. The latest issue of the Quibbler magazine has a blank column page. After the competition begins, the on-site situation will be released in real time, and readers can click on the interactive options next to the column to like, vote and selectively comment on the content. The so-called selective barrage means that readers can choose a few given words to send, such as, wonderful, great, cheers, average, long live, come on and other positive words, and the barrage will be signed with the approximate location. Before the magic message server was built, such limited interactions and active messages were easier to manage and implement. In order to increase the speed and stability of information transmission, Lucien proposed to interconnect each copy of the Quibbler so that the magic signal would not be attenuated due to crossing too long a distance. Facts have proven that this type of interconnection has significantly increased the transmission distance. In actual testing, most wizarding gathering places in the UK can successfully receive updated information. The Galaxy construction team built many tall stands with ice and snow around the Black Lake, which have excellent views like the Quidditch stands. However, the stairs of the Quidditch stands were too backward, tiring and unsafe. At Lucien's suggestion, Lupin built magic trampolines under each stand. The audience only needed to line up and jump on the trampoline, and they would be gently and accurately launched to the high stands. When coming down, you slide directly down a slide made of ice. The slide looks very steep, almost vertical, but it is cast with a magic similar to a levitation spell. The falling process is slow and peaceful, safe and fun. There are many advertisements on the competition field, mainly Galaxy Group's own, and all businesses have ample space for display and promotion. The rest is rented out to others, which is part of the income of this event. Another source of income is tickets for this competition, which are completely free for young wizards in school and their families, while other wizards have to pay a certain amount of money. However, if you spend a certain amount of money in shops in Hogsmeade or at the competition site, you can enter for free. There is also the merchandise display area at the entrance to the competition venue. Exhibition areas such as Galaxy Communications, Sanley Clothing, Galaxy Construction, and Magic Potion Trade have received many orders. All the extra stalls were loaned out free of charge to merchants in Hogsmeade Village, with only one small request: all packaging bags for the day were to be provided by the Galactic Group. It is printed with the emblems of the Galaxy Group and Hogwarts, as well as the theme of this event, the first Galaxy Cup Hogwarts Magic Sleigh Race. On the way to the stadium, someone who surprised Lucien called him in the shop display area, to be exact, the Sanley Clothing display area. Lucien? Oh dear, it's really you. This is the first time we meet. Ron always mentions you in his letters. Remus always praises you. Mrs. Weasley gave Lucen a warm hug and said, thanks to you. I have such a decent job now. Otherwise, I would still be an ordinary housewife now. That person, of course, was Mrs. Weasley. Lucen politely replied, don't say that. Sanley Clothing Company has developed so well thanks to you. And the newly launched down jackets, I think there is no one else in the magic world who can do better than you. At this time, the Weasleys who were going to the Black Lake Stadium came forward to greet their mother. After chatting for a few words, Mrs. Weasley suddenly remembered something and turned around and shouted, oh, right. Ginny. Come here, dear. Look who's here. Lucen looked behind Mrs. Weasley and saw a pretty little girl poking her head out of the house. She had bright brown eyes, beautiful and smart. She was wearing the latest model of white casual down jacket, and her long red hair was softly draped over the snow-white clothes, forming a strong contrast. When she met Lucen's gaze, her cheeks turned red instantly, and she retracted her little head behind the door like a frightened firefox. Ever since Mrs. Weasley joined the Galactic Group, her family has lived a much more affluent life than in the original plot. The most direct manifestation of this is that all the children no longer need to wear second-hand clothes. To be exact, Mrs. Weasley was not a good housekeeper. Her family had previously relied on the meager income that Mr. Weasley brought home from his job at the Ministry of Magic. In the original novel, Mrs. Weasley went to Gringotts to withdraw money, but there was not a single gold galleon in the vault except for change. In the end, she took out the silver sickles and copper nuts in the corner and took them away. It shows how short of money her family was. But this family was so short of money that they spent all their money every month and their coffers were completely empty. When they got lucky and won the jackpot, they didn't save the money or buy new clothes for their children or new textbooks. Instead, they took all the money to travel to Egypt. They were just free and easy when they had money, and they tightened their belts when they didn't have money. However, Mrs. Weasley was still a competent mother. Although her family was not rich, every child was well fed and clothed, and was taught with love. The family was harmonious and happy. Later, every child was very successful. Now with Lucen's intervention, Mrs. Weasley is no longer idle at home, but started her own business in middle age and earned a generous income. So whether it was Ron, the twin brothers or Percy, they all had more pocket money and endless new clothes to wear. Ginny, the only girl in the family, was originally dirty all day long, wearing old clothes and holding second-hand books in her hands, like Cinderella. Now, Ginny follows her mother to Sanley Company and Galaxy Group every day. She wears the latest clothes, eats nutritionally balanced work meals, and meets high-ranking officials, wealthy businessmen, and outstanding company members. As a result, her whole person underwent a transformation, vaguely showing the temperament that a little princess from a pure-blood family should have. Mrs. Weasley waved her hand with a smile on her face, and Lucen, who was distracted, finally withdrew his gaze. He suddenly felt his face flushed, and he was actually staring at the girl in a daze. But he couldn't explain it. Lucen could only cough awkwardly. At this moment, he wanted to find a hole in the ground to crawl into. There were Weasleys all around him. Chapter 47. After the brief incident in front of the Sanley Clothing Exhibition area, the group came to the competition registration office. The friends returned to their respective teams, registered their names, and drew team numbers. There are not many people who work in groups of 3 or 2, and most young wizards will choose to form a team of 5. This way, they can better complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, and each person will be responsible for a part of the work, which will give them an advantage in both making sleds and competing in competitions. The first item of the competition is of course to build a sled. More than 10 teams are divided into an area. Every teams are surrounded by a circle, with basic materials such as wood, ropes, and iron bars placed in the middle. The commentator is still the eloquent and articulate Lee Jordan. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first Galaxy Cup Hogwarts Magic Sleigh Race. There are 158 teams and 489 students registered for this competition. It's so shocking. Almost half of the students at Hogwarts have participated. Today, let us witness this unprecedented competition together. The audience burst into applause at once, and the atmosphere group below also ignited the magic cannon at the appropriate time. Suddenly, clusters of colorful smoke formed flowers and beautiful shapes bloomed in the sky, and the smoke also formed eye-catching emblems of the Galaxy Group and Hogwarts. This competition is exclusively sponsored by the Galaxy Group. Thank you very much. When Lee Jordan said this, he subconsciously glanced at Professor McGonagall. Seeing that the other party was not angry with him, he remembered that this was not an advertisement. The sponsor was indeed the Galaxy Group. Reassured, Lee Jordan began explaining, "The competition has officially begun. Now we will proceed to the first item. Sled making. The participating teams will use the materials provided by the venue to build their own sleds. This level not only tests the wizard's design ability. It is also a competition of magic skills." As Lee Jordan gave his commentary, telescopes were immediately set up on the stands and the teams were busy with their competition. Lu Sen took Neville and began to operate slowly. He did not use a wand, but drew talismans on his palm and selected several thick tree trunks from the pile of materials with his fingers. "I'm going to start NA6. Following Lu Sen's reminder, the little fat man hurriedly retreated, and after hiding to a sufficient distance, he gave Lu Sen a thumbs up, indicating that he had reached a safe place. Lu Sen stretched his neck, arms, and legs, and took out 2 homemade magic wands from his pocket. One in each hand, dual-wielding magic wands. "Are you afraid?" Lu Sen was seen using a levitation spell with one hand and a cutting spell with the other. With a few strokes, he chopped the wood into several sections and placed them on the ground one by one. Then he stepped forward and switched both wands to the lighting spell lightsaber mode. Without the bonus of the thunder wand, the lightsaber at this moment is just bright white in color. Neither its power nor its temperature can be compared with the genuine one, but it is more than enough for cutting wood. Lu Sen attacked from both sides, but he had a clear mind and was not panicking. In a short while, a pile of scraps had accumulated under his feet, and the remaining parts had turned into steaming parts with sharp edges. Having seen Lu Sen practice several times, Neville knew that the dangerous part was over, so he approached with confidence. No matter how many times he has seen it, such smooth cutting and powerful magic are always amazing. Neville is full of admiration for Lu Sen. The main parts have been made, and Neville is now in charge of assembly. Lu Sen takes the iron bars and iron plates to process the last few parts. 2 wide wooden boards with curved front sections are the foundation of the sled and serve as tires, placed at the bottom. Several beams were cut with mortise and tenon grooves, and Neville used a levitation spell to control the assembly. On top are wooden chairs, steering wheels, and other accessories. The wooden sled is made entirely of mortise and tenon structures, which are sturdy and easy to assemble. The little fat boy completed the construction by himself. At this time, Lu Sen had already used his lightsaber, which could cut through iron like mud, to cut the rough shape of the metal parts, and then used a transformation spell to reshape the parts. After the sled is complete, the more important step comes enchantment. After a few bonding spells came the reinforcement spell, then the weight-reducing spell, the waterproof spell, the windproof spell, the wear-resistant spell, the wind rune, the cushioning rune. There are more than 20 kinds of magic and ancient magic words involved. Finally, Lu Sen also put a few Chinese-specific golden armor charms, light body charms, divine movement charms, and rebound charms on the sled. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Lu Sen gave Neville an OK gesture. Mark III is done. Neville quickly raised his wand and fired a firework into the sky, which meant that their sled was completed. Lee Jordan's commentary sounded in the air, "Look! Team 37 has completed the construction of the sled. It took 25 minutes. Ranked 7th. Please ask the inspection team to go and check it out." Lu Sen looked at Neville in astonishment. He had been concentrating on the explanation and didn't pay attention to it. "We are the 7th to finish? How is that possible?" Neville counted on his fingers and recalled, "The first 3 are from the Ravenclaw team, the 4th is the Weasley twins, the 5th is the senior Slytherin, but they have Ravenclaw to help them, and the 6th is, who was it? I remember. It's Cedric's team." Lu Sen was a little sad that he was surpassed by so many people. At this time, Professor Sprout came with 2 senior girls for inspection. The professors acted as inspectors in this part. After all, some senior students couldn't fully tell what magic the contestants used. Even though Professor Sprout spends all day in the greenhouse growing herbs, her magic level is very good. When Neville saw that it was Professor Sprout who came, he immediately smiled. He loved herbology class the most. The test results were synchronized to the commentator through a small information board, so Professor Sprout wrote here and Lee Jordan spoke on it. The sled of Lu Sen and Neville's team uses a double slide design. The entire sled is made up of multiple pieces of wood and uses a traditional oriental mortise and tenon structure. This means that even without the bonding spell, this structure is very stable and strong. Wow! This is amazing! After 2 rounds of applause for encouragement, he continued, they were also excellent in spells. They used levitation spells, waterproof spells, windproof spells, wear-resistant spells, and Chinese magic on top of that. However, it's not against the rules. Congratulations to the team for qualifying. The two returned to the rest area and waited for all the teams to finish the construction. After a while, Harry's team of 3 also finished the construction. Lee Jordan explained, Team 65 has completed the manufacturing. Their members are Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger. Their sled uses a 3-slide design, 2 in front and 1 in the back, which helps to improve the flexibility of turning. The entire tree trunk was hollowed out, and then enlarged using the magnification charm. Very good design. Similar to the designs of the top 3 Hufflepuff teams, the parts of Team 65 are more cleverly connected, using a combination of transfiguration charm and adhesion charm. Congratulations to Team 65 for qualifying. The sled making competition went smoothly, and Lee Jordan never stopped talking. However, by the end of the 2-hour time limit, more than 50 teams still failed to qualify for the competition. Some people don't know how to enchant, and the sleds they made can't move at all. They are just wooden frames that need horses or sled dogs to pull them in the Muggle world. Although some teams built a magic sleigh, they secretly stuffed a magic carpet or a broomstick into it. After being discovered, they were disqualified from the competition. There were also some young wizards who signed up on a whim, but when they arrived at the venue and saw the logs, they were dumbfounded. They had no idea how to cut or combine them, let alone enchant them. So more than 50 teams were eliminated in the first round. Excluding the ones that violated the rules, the remaining 20-odd teams didn't even cut a single piece of wood, but still received a small souvenir from the Galaxy Group. Each person had an exquisite magic pen engraved with the words, "Commemoration of the 1991 First Galaxy Cup Hogwarts Magical Sleigh Race." Next up is the official competition. Chapter 48. The official competition began after a short break. More than 90 qualified teams lined up on the track according to the order in which they completed the sled production. Team Lucen was ranked 7th and ranked near the front. He and Neville's sled were alongside Harry and Ron. In front of them was the sled of Cedric, the Weasley twins and others. Lucen found that his sled might be the most complicated and sophisticated one on the field. The sleds of the first 3 Ravenclaw teams were very simple and rough. The first place sled had a base made of 3 bark-covered logs glued side by side, with a log placed horizontally on top as a seat, and 2 arm-thick sticks inserted vertically in front of the seat as handles. That was it. There wasn't even a curve at the front. The second place sled was even more bizarre. It was a wooden stake with leather on it that was enlarged to more than 1 meter thick using a magnifying spell, and then 2 holes were dug out inside for people to sit on. It didn't even have a base. Lucen was very curious about how they would keep their balance. The third one is a little bit stronger, but only to a limited extent. The sled has 2 skateboards, but those skateboards are too small, just the size of 2 feet. It looks like an enhanced version of the second one, but with 2 extra legs on both sides of the trunk to keep balance. It's like a bicycle with training wheels. Big trunk, small legs. Lucen was worried about them, wondering if the legs would break when turning. Lucen shook his head. He looked back and saw more bizarre and imaginative designs. The competition required the user to use the materials on site to make a 2-seat sled that could move forward on its own. As long as it didn't fly, it could move forward in any way. Are the young wizards understanding things too broadly? What kind of weird things are these? But we have to admit that these weird things are also in line with the rules. It is said that wizards lack logical thinking, and it seems to be true. For a civilization that relies too much on magic, does it still need to consider so much? What about industrial design? A magic trick allows you to realize various functions. What about material mechanics? There are several reinforcement spells to help you solve it. What about tolerance matching? The enlargement and reduction spells can do whatever you want. Lucen looked around and whispered, "Neville, isn't our design a little too conservative? Look around you." Neville also noticed the young wizard's imaginative designs. Even though he was born in a wizard family, his worldview was refreshed. But he was still confident in Lucen and said, "Don't worry, Lucen. Our sled is the best." Ron on the side excitedly interrupted, "Ours is the best. We'll know after a comparison." Haha. After waiting for a while, Lee Keaton began the countdown. With the last sound, a dazzling red firework exploded in the sky. In an instant all the contestants began to rush forward. The initial section of the track is a separate straight ice track, leaving enough space for the athletes to create distance between themselves. Only after the straight section is over will you enter the official track through a turn. The sled designed by Lu Sen is operated by a steering wheel, which allows for more precise control and is more in line with his usage habits. The pedals under your feet are connected to the switches of the levitation spell and the wind talisman, just like driving a car. What surprised Lu Sen was that many of the contestants had faster acceleration than his sled. As soon as he stepped on the accelerator, several sleds rushed out with a whoosh. However, these sleds that accelerated too quickly obviously lacked stamina, and after more than 10 seconds, Lu Sen overtook them one by one. Neville looked sideways as he passed the slowing sleds. Most of them used the fierce fire-breathing magic of blazing flame as a propulsion force. But it was obvious that the makers of these sleds did not consider the heat resistance of wood, nor did they add enough fireproof function. The tails of several sleds were on fire, and the magic runes on them were destroyed by the flames themselves. The sleds were left with only inertia and plunged into the snow piles on both sides of the track. Immediately, more than a dozen Galaxy Group staff members appeared in mid-air. They rode on their flying brooms and calmly waved their wands, quickly putting out the flames. After confirming that the participating wizards were not injured, they immediately took off again to provide support to other sleds that were in trouble. Lu Sen nimbly dodged the faulty sled and accelerated on the straight track. Not far ahead, the twin brothers were sprinting while shouting loudly. Their sled also had a flamethrower, but it was much more advanced than the previous ones. At the tail of their sled was a fire dragon transformed by magic. The dragon was only the size of a puppy, but the flames it spewed were very fierce. The propulsion provided by the little dragon put their sled in the leading position. Following closely behind the twins was Cedric's sled. There was a thin film on his head, probably formed by the bubble head charm, which acted as goggles. This could isolate him from the strong airflow and allow him to see the road ahead clearly at all times. The acceleration effect of his sled is also very good. A group of ancient magic runes are neatly engraved on the flat tail of the sled. It uses the storm magic runes as the driving force. At the same time, bubbles are constantly generated. Under the action of the storm, the bubbles are rapidly ejected backwards, as if it is a flame composed of colorful bubbles. The Ravenclaws who ranked in the top 3 of the manufacturing list made Lu Sen amazed by the way they advanced. The sled was made of a wooden stake. Lu Sen was curious about how they could keep balance. The amazing thing was that they didn't even consider balance. The two drivers were one on the front and one on the back. One on top. One on the bottom. The wooden stakes on the track spin forward like cannonballs. The driver who turns to the top controls the direction. When turning to the bottom, the head retracts, and the special helmet on the head fits perfectly with the hole in the cockpit. At this time, the other driver exposes his head to drive. Lu Sen gave a thumbs up sincerely and praised in his heart, "You are really a talented person." At this time, the straight track was nearing its end, and more than 30 sleds with substandard quality and design defects were eliminated. There is a sharp turn at the end of the straight track, but in order to prevent the contestants from crashing off the track, a huge curved ice wall was built on the curved part. Even if the sled rushes up without slowing down, it can still turn on the arc-shaped wall. This ingenious design has been widely used in subsequent tracks. It not only increases safety, but also makes the competition fun and exciting. Lu Sen drove the sled on the curved wall and inertia turned, and entered the official track in a flash. A 6-lane track was built on the Black Lake, with different arrangements on each lane. Traps or rewards require players to adapt to the situation. At this time, Li Qiaodan's commentary voice sounded again, "Welcome to the official track. Congratulations. The challenge officially begins." As he finished speaking, wash basin-sized translucent gold coins lit up on the track. Each coin had a circle of the Galaxy Group logo, with different scores such as 1, 5, and 10 marked in the middle. Ladies and gentlemen. Dear contestants. Do you see the gold coins on the field? Please drive your beloved sled to collect them. Feel free to crash into them. As long as you smash the gold coins, you will get points. The first sled to complete 5 laps will get 3,000 points. The second place will get 2,800 points. And so on. But don't underestimate the gold coins on the track. A little bit adds up to a lot. In the end, the ranking will be determined by points. Please keep your eyes open. If you encounter red coins, don't hit them. Red means points will be deducted. At the same time, there are exciting mechanisms waiting for everyone on the field. So, go for it. I wish you all good luck. Everyone has seen the rules of the game before the race, but only when you are on the track will you truly understand their meaning. Magic gold coins are refreshed at any time. After you get on a sled to collect the coins, they will be refreshed on the spot soon, but you don't know whether it will add points or subtract points. Ding 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 ding. A series of gold coins collided and Lu Sen was in a good mood. It felt great to harvest gold coins. Lu Sen sincerely admired Lupin at this moment. He just described the scene in the racing game he had played, and the other party understood it and did it. Moreover, both the visual and sound effects are impeccable. Lu Sen experienced the reality and excitement that VR racing can't achieve in this magical world. At this time, the log block who was chasing the Weasley twins in front of them was the first to have problems. Their sense of direction became worse and worse. The disadvantages of the two people's alternating control became apparent. If it was a straight track, it wouldn't be a big problem for the two to take turns, but it was much more difficult on the complex and ever-changing official track. They couldn't react to the bonus and deduction coins in front of them. Moreover, circling in circles for a long time also made the two drivers start to feel dizzy. Finally, when it was flying over a small slope, the log block instantly lost its direction and spun outside the track. Lu Sen's sled happened to be behind him, and this sudden big guy blocked his way. Amid Neville's screams, Lu Sen pulled the brake to activate the reverse wind rune under the sled. He narrowly avoided the rolling wooden stake. By the time Lu Sen started again and got back on the track, a large number of sleds had already passed him. Lu Sen comforted the sad-looking Neville and said, "It's okay. It's just the first round. We still have a chance." As he spoke, Lu Sen made a hand gesture and activated a magical talisman. The sled suddenly accelerated, and as it passed one sled after another, it actually gave Lu Sen and the other man a strong feeling of being pushed on their backs. However, the magic talisman was originally intended for humans, so it was not very effective when used on a large sled. It only accelerated for a few seconds before its power was exhausted. The sled started to speed again, but Lu Sen was already in the middle of the team, and the track seemed a little crowded. Looking around, Lu Sen discovered another magical design. The one on the left can no longer be described by the word sled, it is a large centipede. It's obviously a weird shape created by transfiguration, but it's incredibly stable, allowing several pieces of wood connected together to run smoothly and quickly on the ice. All-terrain. Multiple legs for shock absorption. Awesome! The one on the right is also outrageous. Their sled is a very traditional design, light and small, the kind that even a dog can pull. But the key is that what he transformed out of the wood was not a dog. Instead, it was a giant python. Snake pulling a sled. It's outrageous. But the key is that this snake looks like a 5-cent special effect. Not to mention the sections, the wood grain on it is clearly visible. The snake's head didn't change successfully, so I took a pen and drew a pair of cute eyes on it. It looks pretty good, but what the hell? Main point, one is really daring to build, the other two are really daring to drive? Lu Sen smiled knowingly. These seniors' imaginations were no worse than his own. Not bad, not bad. I am not alone in this. Chapter 49. The slightly congested middle position was not easy to maneuver. Lu Sen tried to move left and right, but he failed to shake off several opponents, and he didn't get any gold coins. Soon the 2 laps were over and Lu Sen became a little anxious. At this time, the centipede brother next to him started to use crutches and ran more and more awkwardly. Lu Sen saw that the situation was not good and began to slow down and keep his distance. It turned out that the centipede's transformation skill was not perfect, and the transformation time was too short. The long legs that appeared on the wooden stake began to shrink one by one, until they disappeared. The legless centipede lost its power and slid for a short time before it lay across the middle of the track. Although Lu Sen had pulled away, the time left for him to react was still very short. At this time, Lu Sen noticed that there was a small ridge in front of the centipede sled. This ridge was meant to increase the difficulty and fun, but at this time it became Lu Sen's life-saving straw. Lu Sen turned the steering wheel and pressed down on the small pond at the critical moment. The front of the sled was not raised high, but it barely pressed down on the sled blocking the road. Bang! Bang! After the bumps, Lu Sen's sled safely crushed the centipede sled and flew over. This sudden situation not only affected Lu Sen, but also scared the snake sled. Although the snake sled was on another track, it also needed to dodge urgently. But the poor big snake did not react in time and hit the contestant next to it. The snake was also a product of the transfiguration curse. Although its transformation level was slightly stronger than that of the centipede, it was just about the same. Facing the sudden situation, the snake sled was also half a beat slower in its reaction. The big snake was unable to dodge and staggered off the main road, crashing into an unlucky sled next to it with a clang. Small accidents happened frequently during the competition, but they were all minor collisions. In the wizarding world, as long as they were not magical injuries, broken bones and tendons were all minor injuries that could be healed in minutes. What's more, the Galaxy Group has equipped each little wizard with a simplified version of the Quidditch emergency airbag suit. In the event of a major collision, it will automatically protect the little wizard. After the little episode, Lu Sen cast the magic talisman twice more, and used flexible movement to complete multiple overtaking, and finally broke through the congested road section. But it was already the third lap. The difficulty of the game suddenly increased. The layout of the arena changed again, and many mechanisms and obstacles slowly rose up. One of the tracks was even erected high and turned into a huge vertical ring, a 360-degree circular acceleration track. The audience in the stands looked over through binoculars and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Not only was the circular track thrilling, but a large number of high-value gold coins also appeared on it. The several contestants in front of Lu Sen obviously noticed this and moved towards the circular track. As they bumped into each other and fought for the road, Lu Sen seized the opportunity and shouted, "Neville! Speed up!" Neville received the signal and pulled the special lever on his side, and suddenly a violent thrust came from the tail of the sled. Storm acceleration. Start! As the magic rune was activated, the sled exploded with terrifying acceleration. Just as it was about to hit the sled in front, Lu Sen completed the seal and slapped it on the steering wheel. Bang! A loud explosion came from the lower side of the sled. Several people who were bumping into each other and trying to get through were attracted by the movement behind them, but before they turned around, they found that the sunlight above their heads was blocked. Lu Sen flew over their heads with a whoosh. Bang! Lu Sen, who landed again, had already surpassed several people and adjusted the steering wheel to stabilize the sled again. Foul! He committed a foul. He just flew up. Many participating players and spectators who saw this scene protested against Lu Sen's actions. However, Lee Jordan quickly conveyed the judge's opinion: it was not a foul. The explosion rune just now only made the sled jump briefly, not let it fly, so it was in compliance with the regulations. As long as the sled's forward movement was not floating in the air, it was in compliance with the regulations. At this time, Neville in the CO pilot seat asked tremblingly, Lu Sen? Do we really want to take this road? It seems to. Lu Sen chuckled and said nonchalantly, danger? Don't worry. Fortune and wealth are sought in danger. Let's go. Ha! Amid the exclamations of the audience, Lu Sen drove the sled towards the circular track. As the angle continued to increase, Neville's heart was in his throat. It was too steep. And it was going to be vertical soon. Wouldn't he fall? Lu Sen also started to get serious. Although the gold coins on the circular road were of huge denominations of 20, 30, or even 50, the road ahead would require some real skills. Neville, you control the direction. After Lu Sen shouted, his hands actually left the steering wheel and he started drawing talismans quickly. Neville was stunned. You actually let me do it at such a high speed and at such a critical moment. The uncontrolled sled started to deviate from its direction a second later, and Neville was so scared that he quickly reached out his hand from the side and nervously tried to control the direction. Lu Sen! Are you ready? I can't control myself. The little fat boy's voice was trembling. This was really too stimulating for him. Lu Sen didn't say anything but quickly threw 3 speed talismans and 2 light body talismans at the sled. Okay. Lu Sen took over the steering wheel immediately after shouting, but Neville didn't feel relaxed at all, because the speed of the sled increased by another 30%. At this time, the sled has already reached the vertical position of the circular track. The acceleration has been offset by gravity and there is not much left. Neville looked back and saw that there was only one sled left out of the 3 sleds following closely behind him. The other 2 had fallen off at some point due to lack of speed. Lu Sen tried to activate the storm acceleration rune of the sled again, but unfortunately the cooling time had not yet expired and he had to wait a while to recharge. But the sled had already reached its highest point, and the two of them were now in a completely upside-down perspective. When they looked up, they were looking at the ground. If we don't speed up, the sled will fall straight down. Lu Sen didn't expect that so many ways to accelerate would not be enough. In a hurry, Lu Sen turned his head and quickly formed seals on his hands. Then he held the steering wheel with one hand and swung his palm backwards with the other. Wild Wind Talisman. A fierce gust of wind immediately blew out of his hands. The strong reverse thrust was transmitted to the sled through Lu Sen's arms. The sled in crisis finally picked up speed again. Lee Jordan, it's so thrilling. Lu Sen actually released a wind magic with his hands, and made the sled accelerate back onto the track. The whole audience was attracted by the scene and burst into warm cheers. Lu Sen's sled passed the most dangerous suspended part, but the team following closely behind was not so lucky. When it reached the vertical position, it lost all its means, and the sled lost power and fell in a free fall. However, the protective clothing on the contestants came in handy at this time. After 2 bangs, the airbags wrapped the 2 people into 2 huge balls. Lu Sen didn't have time to pay attention to these things. He and Nai were rushing towards the bottom of the circular track under the influence of gravity acceleration. The extremely high speed caused the sled to shake violently, and Neville even had the illusion that the sled was about to fall apart. Fortunately, this situation soon stabilized, because their sled finally got off the circular track. And the gold coin points in the last section were surprisingly not low. Ding 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 ding. The two of them were finally in the mood to appreciate the wonderful sound of gold coins. Neville said in surprise, 50. 50. 100. Oh my god! How many gold coins did we get? There weren't too many surprises in the last lap, but there were more traps and coins that deducted points on the track, so the contestants had to focus more on avoiding them. If you are unlucky enough to step on the deceleration trap, the deceleration magic on it will cause the speed of the sled to drop sharply. But if you are lucky enough to get a speed up bonus, you can get about 10 seconds of speed up. The effect is comparable to the Storm Rune. However, some players, in order to achieve higher speed and better ranking, ignored the low-value deduction coins and deceleration traps and crashed into the vehicles without thinking. The result is certainly not worth the effort. The deceleration trap will teach you to do slow motion with your left and right hands in every minute. Lu Sen, who had exhausted all his means of acceleration, focused his attention on collecting gold coins and acceleration rewards. There were still many strange little mechanisms and ramps with gold coins that no one had collected. For example, there was a section full of red minus coins, and all the players avoided it, but Lu Sen found that there were a lot of large value bonus coins mixed in. There were also a few speed up rewards. This requires high maneuverability and flexible driving skills to try. But just when he was happily picking up a bargain, he found out that someone else had discovered the secret. Harry! Aren't you in the front? Why are you falling behind? Lu Sen shouted. It was his good roommates Harry and Ron who also collected large sums of gold coins with flexible driving. Those Slytherin guys were naughty. They knocked us off the track. But they didn't get what they wanted. They hit a trap and were eliminated. Ron replied loudly. At this time, a broken-down sled appeared in front of the two teams, and both teams quickly separated to avoid it. However, when they passed by, they were surprised to find that it was the twins' sled. Something had gone wrong with their sled, and the two were now scratching their heads in frustration. At this time, we turned another corner and there was only half a lap left on the track. Both Lu Sen and Harry used their flexible positioning to gain a speed-up bonus, but neither of them was able to shake off the other. Harry! Hurry, hurry! We're almost at the finish line! Ron shouted excitedly. Lu Sen also quickly said to Nai, try to see if you can speed up. Neville immediately turned the accelerator, but there was no response. He said helplessly, I tried it. The storm rune seems to be broken. Can you use your hands to release the storm again? No. My arm is almost broken. Lu Sen replied. Seeing Harry and his companion's sled overtaking, Lu Sen hurriedly tried to think of a solution. After one race, his magic power was almost exhausted. It wasn't because his sled was not good enough, but because he had used too many runes and acceleration methods on the circular track. Neville! You control the direction. Lu Sen said, then took out his spare wand, turned around and performed transfiguration on the tail of the sled. A few seconds later, Lu Sen grabbed the steering wheel again and said to Neville, "Hold on tight. We're going to sprint." Neville held the handle obediently, but after waiting for a few seconds he said, "Why do I smell something burning? What's on fire, Lu Sen?" Lu Sen smiled at him, showing his white teeth, and said, "Don't worry, Neville. We are the ones on fire. 3, 2, 1. Whoosh. Bang. Ah. Grandma. I want to go home." Just when Harry and Ron were about to cross the finish line, Lu Sen and Neville's sled came from behind and crashed in front of them. Swish! With a sharp friction sound, the half-remaining sled was pushed by the explosion and overtook Harry and the others and reached the finish line. Lu Sen kicked open the cracked cockpit, turned around and pulled the frightened Neville up from his seat. At this time, Harry and the other two ran over with shocked expressions. "Are you okay? What the hell was that move?" Lu Sen skillfully took out Weasley's magic hairdresser, tidied up his messy hair in an instant, and said calmly, "It's the transfiguration spell. I turned the back half of the sled into a flying monkey." Ah ha 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 ha. Harry. Ron. Lu Sen's group finished the race in 12th place, and Harry's group finished in 13th place. However, after the gold coins were calculated, Lu Sen's final ranking was only second to Cedric. He won the runner-up. Lu Sen said regretfully, "If I had known this trick was so fast, I would have turned the sled into a firecracker." Neville, degree, ugh. My roommate is so scary. Chapter 50. It has been half a month since the bobsleigh race ended, but people are still as enthusiastic about this ice sport as ever. That day, a photo of Lu Sen's team, Cedric's team, and a company of Slytherin and Ravenclaw holding up medals and flowers together dominated the front page of the newspaper. This new sport has become completely popular. Lu Sen had already made arrangements for the little wizards who were unable to participate and the teams who were left with regrets. The track on the Black Lake will be kept for a while so that everyone can continue to play in their spare time after class, but dangerous parts such as the 360-degree vertical track will be removed. This news made the little wizards cheer. They still have many ideas that have not been put into practice, and more sled shapes are waiting to be explored. The community is divided into two camps regarding this event. Some wizards think that this is a game for children, and it is completely different from the ancient Quidditch. The difference is too great. But more wizards showed enthusiasm for this ice sport. Judging from the online voting and feedback of the Quibbler, everyone expressed their approval of the Galaxy Group's layout and the performance of the little wizards. After a period of time, many envious wizards came from far and wide to experience the fun of the magic sled. Lupin, the chief designer of this track, also became a little famous, and Galaxy Group's construction business received another batch of orders. Lupin will be busy in the days ahead. However, just as the Christmas holiday was approaching, the behavior of Harry and his companions began to become abnormal. The three of them were actually secretly reading books in the library. "What are you looking for?" Lu Sen asked in a low voice when he met a few people in the library. Ron hurriedly closed a thick book and said, "Nothing. We're just taking a look." Harry nudged the other person with his elbow, because Ron spoke loudly unconsciously, attracting many young wizards who were reading and studying to look over at him. "We're actually accompanying Hermione," Harry said, winking at Ron frantically. The other party understood and continued, "Yes. That's it. Accompany Hermione. She loves reading. You know." Hermione rolled her eyes in the pile of books, lamenting that the acting skills of these two idiots were so poor. Even a dog would not believe such a crude excuse. But Lu Sen nodded seriously and said, "Yeah, I know. So you two flower protectors will accompany her throughout the whole process, right?" Ron nodded without hesitation, yes, that's it." Lu Sen smiled secretly in his heart. Didn't he just want to know who Nicholas Flamel was? But he pretended not to know, shook the book in his hand and said, "I'm here to return the book, so you three can continue reading. Oh, by the way, the book Outstanding Figures in Modern Magic is very boring. I don't think it's as interesting as the chocolate frog picture cards. I'm leaving first." When Lu Sen turned and left, Ron realized that the title of the book he had been hiding was now exposed. Lu Sen was still a little disappointed. He still considered them his friends, but these three people were so mysterious and kept something from him. If they asked him, he would tell them the answer on the spot. Why bother? "Okay, you guys play by yourselves. Just when he was some distance away from the library, Harry suddenly called him. Wait for me. Harry? Why aren't you reading? Is there something wrong? Lu Sen asked in surprise. This is the real trouble. He was just muttering to himself. Harry took a few deep breaths and said, I'm sorry, Lu Sen. I didn't want to hide it from you. It's... At this time, another sound of footsteps came from behind Harry, and Hermione's voice came over, it's me, ha, ha. She also took a few deep breaths before continuing, it was me who asked him to keep it a secret. Lu Sen rolled his eyes. He looked at the two people who caught up with him and said, what's going on? Why are you being so mysterious? At this time, Ron slowly followed with a pile of books in his hands. Seeing that several people stopped in the corridor, he quickly put the books on a long bench beside him and supported his waist. Lu Sen couldn't help laughing, pfft. You three are too weak. You need to exercise more. Ahem. I was just kidding, who of you can tell me what you are hiding? I didn't let them tell us. We are looking for clues. Hermione looked directly into Lu Sen's eyes without fear. There's something wrong with Snape. He was cursing Harry during Quidditch. I've seen the curse process in a book. He looked directly at the opponent and kept chanting the spell. That's what Snape did. I saw it with my own eyes. If I hadn't interrupted him, Harry would have fallen to death. When Lu Sen heard this, he couldn't help but ruffle Hermione's hair, even though it was already very messy. Under Hermione's fierce and biting gaze, Lu Sen took out a folding comb from his pocket, the new Weasley magic hairdresser, and with 2 strokes he turned the other person's hair into flowing straight hair. Ron wanted to speak up to stop Lu Sen when Hermione's hair became messy, but he stopped talking when he saw Hermione's beautiful hairstyle. Well, it looks good. Seeing that the other person was staring at the top student girl, Lu Sen threw the hairdressing comb over to her. Here you go, Hermione's hairstyle is up to you. And Harry's hair color? You know. Lu Sen said with a wink. Cool. You gave it to me? Fred and the others didn't even give me a discount. I'm their younger brother. Ron happily put it away and complained. Hermione suddenly got angry and she shouted, Hey! Can you guys be serious? I'm talking about business. Lu Sen shook his head and said, I told you, it was Quirrell who cursed Harry. I interrupted Quirrell. Why don't you believe it? Snape was reciting the spell to remove the curse. If he wanted to harm Harry, why did he catch Harry in the end? Right, Harry? Harry nodded, yeah, I think so too. Snape is a very nice person. He takes good care of me. Hermione put her hands on Harry's shoulders, looked at him closely and said, but Harry. Don't forget that Snape's leg was injured that night with the troll. You were the one who discovered it. He must have taken advantage of the chaos to go to the 3-headed dog's room and try to take the things underneath. And then he was just being nice to you to distract his vision. He wanted to get rid of you. Only by being nice to you can you avoid arousing other people's suspicion. Harry was stared at face to face, and his heart was in turmoil. At the same time, he felt that what Hermione said made sense. Snape was so mean to everyone, why was he so nice to him? Was it really to avoid suspicion? Lu Sen was speechless. The top student thought he had grasped the truth of the matter and started to make wild guesses with just a few clues. So? If you want to suspect Snape, then suspect him. Why are you investigating something without telling me? Why are you keeping it so secretive? Lu Sen turned the subject back. He just wanted to hear them say it in person. We learned this when we were talking to Hagrid. Harry was interrupted by Hermione's cough before he could finish. Hee. It's nothing. Right, Harry? Ron. Hermione glared at the two of them sternly, with an expression that said, if you dare to refute me, I'll be in trouble. The two of them quickly lowered their heads and said nothing, but there was a hint of guilt towards Lu Sen in their eyes. Lu Sen was going crazy. Why was this girl so obsessed with this? Suddenly he remembered a classic line, a woman who messes with my brothers must. Never mind. She belongs to both of you, do whatever you want with her. Chapter 51. Faced with the Harry trio's concealment of the truth from him, it was impossible for Lu Sen not to be disappointed. Hermione used her little brain to connect the known clues and stubbornly felt that there was something wrong with Snape. But it was wrong for her to keep imposing her own judgment on Harry and Ron. What disappointed Lu Sen the most was Harry and Ron. Good brothers living under the same roof and in the same dormitory were actually split into two groups by a girl. Harry was still a little hesitant, and he was not sure whether to believe Hermione or Lu Sen. On one hand, there was a good friend who told him that Snape was a good man, and on the other hand, there was a beautiful and smart girl who was convinced that Snape wanted to kill him. It was really hard to judge. But what about Ron? He had no opinion at all, and was easily turned against by Hermione's glance. If you like reasoning games, go ahead and play them. I won't accompany you. But I still say that Snape is not an enemy. Lu Sen said and turned around to leave alone. These three insisted on solving the case according to their own ideas. It was useless to stop them. In the end, they would prove who was right and who was wrong. But Hermione insisted at this time, because Snape is yours. Lu Sen stopped and looked back with a questioning look on his face. Hermione continued, Snape is the Galactic Group's potion master. You don't deny that, do you? Lu Sen sighed and said, I won't deny it. He is our special alchemist, developing cutting-edge healing potions. But Hermione said to Harry and Ron before Lu Sen finished speaking, did you hear that? He admitted it. So what did I say? They are in the same group. Lu Sen wanted to leave, but he didn't expect the other party to keep going and even drag himself into it. How can you tolerate this? Haha. Fine, fine. Then don't blame me. Lu Sen, who had a plan in mind, couldn't help but smile sinisterly. Little Hermione. You are not cute like this. In fact, everything I do is for you. Lu Sen said with a wronged look on his face. After these words were spoken, the three of them were stunned, and Hermione, the person involved, had a face full of question marks. Lu Sen walked slowly to Hermione, looked at her tenderly, and moved her chin with his finger and said, From the first time I saw you, I was deeply attracted to you. Your beautiful hair, your every frown and smile are all deeply imprinted in my heart. Hermione was stunned for 2 seconds before she backed away blushing and stammering, You, what are you talking about? Lu Sen turned his back, looked out the window and continued, I'm not as famous as Harry, nor do I have Ron's distinguished family background and pure blood origin, so I worked hard to study and strive to make you smile. But I failed. But I didn't give up. I used all the resources to package myself. Started a company. Do research and development. Just to let you see my ability. See my ambition. But you. Lu Sen turned around and took a few steps back to face the three of them. He covered his heart with one hand and pretended to be in pain. He pointed at Hermione and said, But you ignored me. I hate you. It was Harry. And Ron. They stole your heart. Stared at by Lu Sen's angry eyes, Harry and the others immediately waved their hands to deny, It's not me. I didn't. There seemed to be fire burning in Lu Sen's eyes, and he said viciously, It's you too. So I have to get rid of you. Only then will Hermione return to my arms. He slowly clenched his fingers, and the joints made a creepy crackling sound. I bribed Hagrid to hide the three-headed dog, and then I found a chance to trick you in. Ron was sweating profusely, but he discovered the problem and couldn't help but interrupt, But, the three of us went in together. You almost killed the three of us. You even didn't let Hermione go. Lu Sen smiled sinisterly and said, He he he. I've let the three-headed dog smell the scent of Hermione's hair a long time ago. It won't hurt my beloved Hermione. It will only tear the two of you apart. My good roommates. The three of them suddenly shuddered and took a step back together. Lu Sen continued, But I didn't expect you to run away. But it doesn't matter. I bribed Snape again. And organized a dangerous skiing competition. All to eliminate you. In this way. I can have you. At this point, Lu Sen had walked up to Hermione again, put his hand on her chin, and looked at her affectionately. The series of confessions shocked Hermione. The information contained in them was extremely terrifying when you think about it carefully. The three of them were frightened for a moment. Lu Sen had already grasped the spare magic wand behind his back at some point, and instantly lit up a dazzling beam of light. Watch out for the sword. A sword swept across, and the three men had no time to react. Ah! After 3 screams, Lu Sen said slowly, What I can't get, no one else can get. Ron covered his abdomen in fear and bent down subconsciously, Ah! Hey! But 2 seconds later, he touched his abdomen and found that there was no wound at all. His body was not cut in half by the indestructible thunder flame lightning sword. Harry and Hermione also reacted at the same time and looked at each other in confusion. Everyone was surprisingly unharmed. When I looked up again, I saw that Lu Sen had run more than 10 meters away and was out of sight. But before they could chase after it, they immediately heard something rolling towards them at their feet, followed by a crisp crackling sound. Ron looked down and his eyes widened. He shouted in panic, "Run! It's a dung bomb!" Bang! With a muffled sound, the location where the three people were was immediately covered by thick green mist. The three people, covering their mouths and noses in pain, supported each other and escaped from the green fog in a panic, but suddenly stopped. They lowered their heads and smelled their bodies with question marks on their faces, revealing expressions of disbelief. Harry was the first to speak, "Matcha flavor." At this time, the communicator in Ron's pocket rang. He asked Hermione and the others, "It's Lou Sr. Should I answer it?" Hermione snatched it away, and after the call was connected, she shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" Lu Sen laughed loudly on the other side, "Ha ha ha ha. I was dying of laughter when I saw you guys just now. I made up a story and actually scared you three idiots. Especially you. I really should have recorded what happened just now. Ha 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 ha. What's the point of investigating with this IQ? Don't play reasoning games. Ha ha ha. Cough cough, I can't hold it anymore, I laughed so hard. By the way, do matcha bullets smell good?" Harry and Ron both breathed a sigh of relief. It was great that their roommate wasn't a perverted conspirator. They were almost scared to death just now. Ron interrupted, "So your love for Hermione and your desire to destroy both of us are lies?" Lu Sen thought for 2 seconds and said in the same gloomy tone as before, "He he he. Of course." After a pause, he switched to his normal voice and said cheerfully, "I lied to you. Hermione is not cute at all. I leave it to you." Ah ha 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 ha. Ah ha 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 ha. Damn Lu Sen. Just wait for me. French right. Go to hell. Bang. The mad Hermione even blurted out the words forbidden to broadcast and cursed without caring about her image at all. Finally, she smashed the communicator into pieces. Ron helplessly watched Hermione walk away roaring and gritting her teeth, then he looked down at the broken communicator with a distressed look and said in a trembling voice, "This is mine." Chapter 52. Ah ha 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 ha. Late at night, Lu Sen couldn't help laughing out loud in the dormitory when he thought about the scene of scaring several people. Harry threw a pillow at him and said, "That's enough. You've been laughing all night. We're really scared of you." "That's right." Hermione was scared and crying. Ron also turned over and got up from his bed. The mouse on his quilt immediately rolled under the bed, squeaking. "Oh. I didn't mean it. Are you okay, Banban?" He picked up the mouse and stroked it twice, comforting it. Lu Sen passed the pillow to Ron and said, "Is she scared? Is she angry?" Harry took the pillow that Ron passed to him and said, "That's because you were angry. She was mad as hell." Lu Sen put away his smile and said, "You guys just won't listen to my advice. I told you who the villain is, but you just don't believe me. You have to investigate it yourself." Ron interrupted, "We're still investigating what's underneath the three-headed dog. Hagrid once let it slip that it was Dumbledore and N.I. Ahem." Harry interrupted. They and Hermione had promised not to tell Lu Sen that they were looking for Nicholas Flamel. Ron also remembered it at this time, and he covered his mouth in fear. Lu Sen shook his head. These two roommates obeyed Hermione's orders. Since they like to mess around, let them do it. So Lu Sen changed the subject and asked his three roommates, "By the way, did you go home for Christmas?" Neville thought for a moment and said, "I've been home before, and my grandmother has already written to me." Speaking of Christmas, Ron was no longer sleepy. He said happily, "My parents are going to Romania to see my brother this year. Originally, they were going with just Ginny, but my mom got a big year-end bonus last week. So we decided to go together." "Oh, thanks, Lu Sen. This is what she deserves." Lu Sen replied with a smile, and then several people turned their eyes to Harry. "I stayed in school, but it's good. Really. I don't want to go back to my aunt and uncle's house." Harry's childhood was truly a sad one. Lu Sen saw several people looking at him, so he said, "I will stay in school like Harry." Harry was surprised and delighted and asked, "Why don't you go home?" Lu Sen rested his head on his arms, crossed his legs and said, "I am of Chinese descent, so Christmas doesn't matter to me. Besides, my family is moving, and I don't know when we will be done moving." Later, when they were compiling the list of students who were kept at school, no one knew how Malfoy knew that Harry would not go home. He deliberately shouted when Harry passed by, "Some people are so pitiful. They can't even go home. They are such poor bastards that no one wants them." He was mainly resentful of Harry for causing Slytherin to lose the Quidditch game, but unfortunately Lu Sen also heard this. "Are you talking about me? I'm staying in school too," Lu Sen said coldly as he stood in front of him. Malfoy was startled. He swallowed, tried his best to smile and said, "Sorry. I was talking about Harry." Then he quickly called Crabbe and Goyle to leave the scene quickly. Harry was very happy to have such a powerful friend like Lu Sen to accompany him, but on the last day of the holiday, Hermione came to him mysteriously. After the two of them muttered to each other, the elementary school bully turned around and took 2 steps, then ran back and punched Lu Sen on the shoulder. Then he glared at him fiercely before dragging his suitcase away. Ron, who left school with Hermione, shrugged helplessly and said, "See you after the holidays." Then he ran a few steps and followed Hermione away happily. The next day, early Christmas morning, Lu Sen and Harry were unwrapping gifts by the bed. They had received presents from Mrs. Weasley in the mail, a smart new sweater for each and a large box of homemade fudge. Harry also received a reply letter from the Dursleys. Inside was a coin, which was their Christmas gift to Harry. Harry tossed the coin aside and muttered, "That's friendly." Then Harry opened his last package and found a cloak that shone with silver. It felt smooth to the touch, as if it were woven from water. "Congratulations, Harry. This is a very rare invisibility cloak." Lu Sen remembered what it was and said, "Put it on and try it out." Harry put it on and really turned into a transparent person. "Who gave it to me?" Harry asked puzzledly. There was a note in the box, written in a thin, artistic font. "Your father left this thing to me before he died. Now it's time to return it to you. Use it well." Apart from this, no signature was left. In addition to the gifts from his family, Lu Sen also received a new product sent by Lupin, a large-scale wizard board game, Muggle War 1 Medieval. This board game was planned and designed by Lu Sen, and Lupin spent a lot of time to make it a reality. It is based on the same principle as the wizard chess, but it is much more complicated. This is a foldable box that is the size of 2 chessboards when unfolded. Inside is a magical sandbox with 10 different terrains pre-made. At the beginning of the game, each side has 1,000 gold coins, and can choose to purchase different types of soldiers to fight, including spearmen, lightly armored swordsmen, heavily armored cavalry, ranged archers, and engineers responsible for construction. Each type of soldier has a different price, and each has its own advantages and disadvantages in speed, attack power, and attack distance, requiring players to match them by themselves. There are also various wild monsters distributed on the map, and you will get gold coins after destroying them. The ultimate goal is to attack the opponent's home. Whoever occupies the opponent's castle first will be the winner. It looks simple, but if you don't know how to match your troops, or rush forward without a battle strategy, you will be defeated quickly. Harry and Lu Sen played for a whole day without getting bored. This game is totally ahead of its time. You have to know that in '91, electronic games were still in the era of red and white machines and arcades, and there was no such real-time strategy game. The graphics and operation are even more overwhelming in this era. Not to mention the wizarding world where Quidditch and wizard chess are the only games. Lu Sen feels that this product will definitely sell well. The dinner was relatively rich, but not many people came to eat as most of the students had gone home for Christmas. In the teacher's seat, Dumbledore had changed into a lady's wizard hat with flowers on it. Professor Flitwick was telling him jokes, making him giggle. The auditorium was decorated gorgeously and festively, with 12 huge Christmas trees, all hung with beautiful decorations. The little wizards would occasionally set off salutes with streamers and toys, and the sound was as loud as grenades. Lu Sen and Harry also pulled a few, and Harry pulled out a new set of wizard chess from them. But he thought the Muggle War was more fun. Just as Harry was about to eat heartily, Lu Sen stopped him, "Eat less. There will be another meal later." In the absence of Hermione, Harry decisively chose to trust his roommate. After the two of them had eaten at the dining table for a while, Lu Sen looked at the time and felt that it was about time, and they had also shown up in front of the professors. So after packing up some special snacks, he took Harry out of the hall. When they were in a deserted place, Harry couldn't help asking, "Where are we going? What did you mean by another meal?" Lu Sen had brought Harry to the gate. He took out Harry's invisibility cloak from his school bag and said, "Come on, put it on, Harry. I'll take you to a good place." Harry was never lacking in adventurous spirit, and he didn't care about breaking school rules, so he put on the invisibility cloak without a second thought. Lu Sen took out a talisman from his pocket, activated it, and slapped it on his body, and then he disappeared into the air. Invisibility charm. It's a bit complicated. I only learned it recently. The two invisible men quietly slipped out of the door and walked outside. After a while, Harry had to stop and asked in horror, "Lu Sen. There is the Whomping Willow in front. We can't get any closer. Where are we going?" Lu Sen was well prepared. He took out a spare wand from his pocket and cast a transfiguration spell on a small stone. The stone turned into a mouse, nimbly dodged the branches of the Whomping Willow, and pressed the raised scar next to the tree hole. Suddenly, the Whomping Willow seemed to be under a petrifying spell and could not move at all. With Harry stunned, the two successfully entered the tree hole. It was pitch black inside and you couldn't see your hand in front of you. Lu Sen immediately took out the spare magic wand, fluorescent, light, shining. A ball of soft white light lightly separated from the magic wand and floated above the two people's heads, illuminating the path in the cave clearly. "How is it? Quite convenient, right? Let's go, Harry. There's a delicious meal waiting for us." After saying that, he took the lead and walked forward. Harry asked more than once where they were going, but Lu Sen always kept the suspense and told him that there was a surprise ahead. When Harry was tired of walking, he finally saw Lu Sen stopped. Harry thought he had reached the end, but when he looked closer, he saw a fork in the road. Lu Sen identified that the path on the right was newer and should have been dug not long ago. "This way. Almost there." Sure enough, after walking about 10 meters forward, there were clean and tidy steps and a door with the light on. Lu Sen smiled and said, "Please bring Harry. Welcome to my home." "Harry, what?" A few minutes later, the two sat down at the dining table. The table was filled with a wide variety of delicious food, many of which Harry had never seen before. Lu Qiuzhong smiled and said, "Merry Christmas. Let's have dinner." "You're welcome, Harry. It's just like home." Julie adjusted the countdown on the camera, quickly ran back to her seat, and said to everyone, "Look at the camera. Say eggplant." Click. "I want to try the food at Hogwarts first. Don't snatch it from me." Uncle Bell said as he picked up a piece of chicken pie that Lu Sen and the others brought and tasted it. Harry was still a little confused. How did the castle turn into a modern house while he was walking? And there were lights outside the windows. It wasn't a compressed space. Harry asked the question in his mind, "Lu Sen, what is going on? How did we get to your house? Is this some kind of teleportation magic?" Lu Sen chuckled and said, "It's not magic. We came to Hogsmeade Village through the secret passage under the Whomping Willow. My family just bought a new house here. We can come over here often in the future." After hearing this, Harry was even more shocked, not because Lu Sen's family bought the house so easily, but because Harry had already experienced his financial resources. What is shocking is the construction of a secret passage under Hogwarts. After hearing Harry's question, Belle smiled and explained, "We dare not build a secret passage under Hogwarts. This secret passage has been built for a long time, and it originally led to the Shrieking Shack." "The Shrieking Shack?" Harry exclaimed. "This famous attraction in Hogsmeade is quite famous. He heard from the senior wizards that it is haunted. And it is haunted by evil spirits." Lu Sen picked up a piece of braised pork with chopsticks and said as he ate, "The Screaming Shack is next door." "Harry, comma number." Lu Sen picked up a piece of braised pork for Harry and said, "Merry Christmas, Harry. Stop daydreaming. Try some Chinese food." Harry imitated Lu Sen and put the meat into his mouth with chopsticks. The meat fragrance filled the air immediately after taking a bite. The soft and glutinous texture and the perfect sweetness made the meat fat but not greasy, leaving a long aftertaste. Next, steamed fish, braised pork elbow, roast duck, sweet and sour pork tenderloin, kung pao chicken. Harry couldn't help but sigh, China has so many delicious foods. Lu Qiuzhong said at this time, "Come on, let's pick up our glasses and have a drink." Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Ding! Ding! Harry followed everyone else's example and clinked glasses. It was the first time he felt such a peaceful and joyful family atmosphere. Chapter 53. Lu Sen, who was burping, walked in the secret passage with Harry, whose belly was swollen. They each held a toothpick in their mouths, hummed a tune, and returned to school happily. As for why I didn't stay at home, it was because the house had just been renovated and many of the custom-made high-end furniture had not yet arrived. But this is more to their liking. When you are full and satisfied, it is suitable to take a stroll. As the saying goes, take 100 steps after a meal, and live to 99. This sentence seems like an insult in the wizarding world of longevity. Dumbledore is over 100 years old. A certain old man who owns the Philosopher's Stone just celebrated his 666th birthday. Thinking of this, Lu Sen turned around and asked Harry, who was walking with difficulty while holding his belly, "By the way, what did Hermione whisper to you when she left school? If it was a little love talk, then there's no need to say it." "Haha." Harry blushed and quickly explained, No. We are not in that kind of relationship. She didn't say anything. But Harry thought, he had just finished dinner at Lu Sen's house and was warmly entertained by the whole family. It would be really unkind of him to hide the secret and not say anything. So he hesitated for a moment and said, "Okay. We are investigating a man named Nicholas Flamel. The thing guarded by the three-headed dog is related to him. We need to know what Snape wanted to steal." "Well, Hermione and Ron guessed it, but I think there was someone else who wanted to steal it." "Maybe you are right, it could be Quirrell." Lu Sen smiled inwardly, finally he believed me. "Why didn't you say it earlier? Why would you bother looking up a book about Nicholas Flamel?" But just as he was about to speak, he heard Harry continue. "We looked through hundreds of books and couldn't find who Nicholas Flamel was. Hermione suggested that I check the restricted section." When Lu Sen heard this, his eyes lit up and he said, "What are we waiting for? We've had a big meal tonight, so let's just take a walk. Let's go to the restricted books section now." Harry's eyes lit up too. He thought for a moment and said, "Then I'll wear the invisibility cloak. I use the invisibility charm." The two hit it off immediately, and after turning invisible, they walked out of the Whomping Willows tree hole and headed straight for the library. The quiet corridor was empty. It was already past the time for the little wizards to go to bed, and most of the teachers and students in Hogwarts had gone home for the holidays. It was a dark and windy night, and it was the perfect time to steal books. But how could it be called stealing when it comes to studying? The two little transparent people used the unlocking spell to sneak into the restricted book area unimpeded. Lu Sen immediately took out the number 2 spare magic wand and turned the lighting spell into the fluorescent stick mode. Looking at the banned books tied with chains, Harry swallowed and didn't know where to start. He picked up a book at random and was about to open it when Lu Sen stopped him. "This book is wrong. There is an evil magical fluctuation." As soon as Lu Sen finished speaking, the book that was pulled out began to tremble violently on the table. Both of them heard a faint roar coming from inside. It seemed like something wanted to come out. The two looked at each other, quickly held the book down, and together stuffed it back into the bookshelf. "It's horrible. No wonder it's a banned book. How can I read it?" Harry said fearfully. Lu Sen rubbed his hands, took out a book called Annotations of Powerful Spells and started reading it. The magic in it is quite radical and rough, and it emphasizes that a strong force can create miracles. It's just a bit time-consuming for wizards, and if used improperly, the magic will backfire. In the mildest case, the magic power will be exhausted, and in the worst case, the body will explode and die. This? Lu Sen quickly stuffed it back and exchanged it for a book called The Making of Powerful Magic Potion. Love potions, polyjuice decoctions, powerful soul-stealing potions, these are all things that are not allowed to be used. Interesting. After that, Lu Sen read several more books with great interest. Compared with the milder spells in the textbooks, many things here are quite taboo and challenge the moral bottom line. It is indeed a banned book. It is indeed not suitable for young wizards to read. Harry carefully pulled out a few modern history books and flipped through them, but still couldn't find any information about Nicholas Flamel. He was a little sleepy at this moment and yawned several times in a row. Lu Sen looked at the time and found that it was already past 12 o'clock, so he put the book back and took Harry back to the dormitory. Harry muttered quietly under the invisibility cloak, losing confidence in the mission to find Nicholas Flamel. Suddenly he bumped into the invisible Lu Sen in front of him, and before he could open his mouth he heard a cat's meow not far away. Harry was shocked. It was Mrs. Norris. This meant Filch was not far away. Sure enough, a few seconds later Filch turned around from the far corridor with a magic spray gun. What's worse is that there was a ghost head floating next to him. It was Peeves. Lu Sen cursed in his heart, "You are jointly enforcing the law here." As Harry's movement speed was a little slow, Lu Sen thought for a moment and whispered, "Let's find a place to hide for a while. You run first and I'll follow you." Harry agreed softly after hearing this, and ran away in a random direction. Lu Sen followed closely behind him, relying on the other party's light footsteps. But I don't know whether the kitten's hearing is particularly sensitive or ghosts have some special way of perception. The law enforcement team always follows Lu Sen and the others. The two of them didn't know where they were at this time. There was a suit of armor on the side of the corridor, which was much taller than the one in front of their classroom. The law enforcement team was getting closer and closer to them. If they continued like this, they would be discovered by the kitten sooner or later, or run into by the running Peeves. Lu Sen suddenly had an idea. He took out a candy from his pocket and transformed it using a sound that only he could hear. Squeak! Filch no longer needs oil lamp lighting, the magic sprayer comes with built-in tactical supplementary light. When the light came on, Filch asked in confusion, "Rats? Wait a minute, Mrs. Norris. Rats are so dirty. You can't eat them." But the cat no longer cared about its owner's instructions and ran away after the mouse. Just then, Harry and the other boy discovered that there was a door on their left that was slightly open. They seized the opportunity and squeezed in sideways, being careful not to touch the door so as not to make any noise. After listening for a while and waiting for Filch and the others to leave, the two finally breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did they look around. This should be an abandoned classroom, with many unused chairs and teaching aids piled in the corner. But both of their eyes were attracted by something on the other side of the wall. An object that was clearly out of place in the room, and seemed to have been placed there temporarily for some reason, an extremely gorgeous mirror. The mirror is very large, almost reaching the ceiling. The entire frame is golden with gorgeous carvings. The lower temples are in the shape of two eagle claws, unique and imposing. There is a line of words on the top of the mirror, which looks like English but looks very weird. Harry took off his invisibility cloak and walked to the mirror curiously. He had never seen such a magnificent mirror before. Soon he showed a look of shock. Because in the mirror, there were people standing behind him. After pondering for a while, Harry excitedly discovered that those were all his family members. The tall, thin man with glasses on the left has the same hair as Harry, and he is his father. The beautiful red-haired woman on the right has the same eyes as Harry. She is his mother. The people behind him also greeted him kindly. They were his grandparents and many relatives. "Lu Sen! Come and see!" Harry shouted to Lu Sen excitedly, "See? My family! I can see them in the mirror." Lu Sen then realized what was going on and understood the words on the mirror. It was a sentence on the mirror, "What I reflect is not your face, but the wish in your heart." This thing is a magical creation that can reflect people's inner wishes. The Mirror of Ariste. Chapter 54. After recognizing that this was the Mirror of Ariste, Lu Sen suddenly understood everything. They were inexplicably found by Filch and his crew, and happened to enter this room. It was all arranged by a headmaster who wished to remain anonymous. He patted Harry's shoulder and was about to tell him, "I'm sorry, what you saw was an illusion." But when the words came to his lips, he saw tears in Harry's eyes, and thought that he had never seen his parents and relatives, let alone felt the warmth of home for a day, so he swallowed the words back. Then he said, "Really? Let me see." Harry excitedly introduced the person in the mirror, but he didn't know that Lu Sen next to him was invisible. Harry put his hand against the mirror, but there was only cold glass. At this moment his heart seemed to be gripped. How he wished he could touch his loved ones inside. It was not until the second half of the night that Harry turned around and found Lu Sen sitting cross-legged behind him, writing something with a pen and paper. Harry stretched his numb hands and feet, checked the time and said in surprise, "It's so late." He was reluctant to leave and even wanted to live here. Seeing Harry finally leave the mirror, Lu Sen closed his notes, took out the prepared concentration talisman, stuck it on his body, and then stood in front of the mirror. Just now he had been analyzing the principle of the Mirror of Ariste. Since this mirror can reflect people's most urgent wishes, it must have a strong mind-reading function. So as long as you use a prop that blocks your thoughts, the mirror will become ineffective. What effect will this have? Lu Sen stood in front of the mirror with a wicked smile, and then he saw himself wearing Iron Man's armor and flying in the vast universe, with endless interstellar battleships behind him, waiting for his dispatch. Well, it's pretty cool. Bullshit. What the hell is this? And how can the mirror read my thoughts? Lu Sen took a step back from the mirror in shock and left the range of the magic. Harry was getting a little sleepy, he wiped his eyes and asked, "Did you see your family too?" Lu Sen blinked and said vaguely, "I see that I have money ability." Harry showed a puzzled look and said, "You already have it. Then didn't you see your family? It's strange. Why can't I see it?" Lu Sen thought that the effect of the talisman might not be strong enough and it just interfered with the mirror, causing it to make a wrong judgment. So Lu Sen drew a concentration talisman more carefully and meticulously, and this time stuck it on the back of his head. Should I be able to block the mirror's mental detection this time? He stood in front of the mirror again. The image blurred twice and then became clear. There is no longer the universe or the galaxy, and there are no more armor or fleets. This time Lu Sen saw a mountain of gold and found himself sitting on a throne on the mountain. This scene seems familiar, it seems to be the treasury of the Dwarf Empire in the movie The Hobbit. But it is even more magnificent than that. The golden mountain is endless, and the golden brilliance is intoxicating. And on the top of the tall golden mountain stands a throne made entirely of gold. Standing on both sides of the throne were many top actresses that I had seen in my previous life, posing and making coquettish gestures. Lu Sen, sitting high on the throne, is surrounded by girls on both sides, including the hot versions of Hermione and Ginny. Hey? What the hell is this? Lu Sen closed his eyes, controlled the distracting thoughts in his mind, and tried to calm the desires and greed deep in his mind. After thinking for a while, he took off the concentration talisman on his body and slapped it directly on his forehead. When he opened his eyes again, the scene in the mirror changed again. At first, the mirror was just like an ordinary glass mirror and there was nothing unusual about it. But soon, Lu Sen in the mirror took out a flying broom from behind and rode on it lightly. He flew 2 circles flexibly and gracefully. Lu Sen is angry. It's infuriating, isn't it? Such experiments are intended to verify the working principle of the magic mirror. The good news is, the principle makes sense. The mirror reads people's innermost desires through magic similar to legilimency, and then displays the scene. The bad news is, the concentration talisman is not very effective against Western mind-reading magic. After Lu Sen knew this, he was so panicked. He thought that the concentration talisman had perfectly concealed his thoughts, so he was bold enough to show off in front of Dumbledore and Snape, and he didn't know how much of his thoughts were exposed. It's useless. It's useless. The next day, Harry was restless all day, waiting for the night to fall. Late at night, he couldn't wait to put on his invisible cloak and dragged Lu Sen to find a mirror. Harry was in a trance last night and didn't know how Lu Sen brought him back, so the task of finding the way was given to Lu Sen. Fortunately, Lu Sen was not bad at finding his way and he carefully memorized the room where the mirror was. The two arrived at the room they had stayed in last night. Harry couldn't wait to throw away his invisibility cloak, ran to the mirror, and looked at his family members in the mirror in fascination. Lu Sen quietly left the room and went to the forbidden book section of the library to find the practice methods of legilimency and occlumency. It was already late at night when I returned to Harry, but Harry just sat in front of the mirror without moving a step, and didn't even notice Lu Sen coming back. Lu Sen shook his head, opened the copied notes and began to study them. The main operating principle of occlumency is to allow the caster to build a mental barrier to train the defenseless mind, ultimately achieving the effect of defending against or even rebounding mind reading. But there is an important prerequisite for training, that is, if you want to learn how to defend and counterattack, you have to learn how to be beaten. Only after being beaten many times can you find the weak points of your soul and develop a sense of resistance. And isn't the mirror of Ariste before us a perfect feeding machine? Lu Sen also studied telepathy, which is a skill that can condense mental power and ultimately break through other people's mental defenses and spy on their thoughts. It's just like the brain blocking technique, one is attack and the other is defense. In the second half of the night, Harry left the mirror more haggard than the day before. He said with some guilt, "I'm sorry for making you wait for me for so long. I couldn't help but want to stay a little longer when I saw my family." After comforting Harry, Lu Sen asked him to sleep in the backpack space for a while, and he would return to the dormitory after practicing. Lu Sen came to the mirror again and rubbed his hands, thinking that this time I have the method to practice brain occlusion, let's see if you can still peek into my thoughts. Lu Sen did not put up the concentration talisman, but was thinking about the key points of the closure technique. After waiting for a while, the image in the mirror was surprisingly stable. There was no change. This meant that the practice was successful. And many more? Shit. Who are you trying to fool? Lu Sen understood that his inner wish at this moment was, not to have his thoughts read by the mirror and to successfully practice the brain closure technique. So the cunning mirror fulfilled his wish. The picture did not change at all. After figuring it out, Lu Sen touched his chin, his heart gradually became abnormal, crossed out, and his heart gradually relaxed. Chapter 55. The result of just thinking about mastering the art of occlumency is that the mirror doesn't change at all. After figuring it out, Lu Sen's mind gradually emptied and he began to think about his deepest wishes. The scene in the mirror had indeed changed. This time, Lu Sen was dressed elegantly and formally, standing on a high podium, talking to the camera and microphone. The officials and the public below applauded and cheered excitedly. He became the president of the International Magical Confederation, and the Secretary General of the United Nations, and the Prime Minister of Ying country. This? After careful feeling, Lu Sen actually found a trace of his mind being invaded, but it was not strong enough. He took a step back, then stepped forward again, his mind continuing to wander, trying not to resist. The scene changed, and Lu Sen was lying on a long white leg. There were many beautiful women in cool clothes and with natural beauty around him, serving tea and water, and massaging his shoulders and back. A long line of palace maids are waiting for their masters to taste their delicacies with plates of delicious food. Lu Sen didn't even need to raise his hand, the beauties around him stretched out their slender hands, picked up the most delicious part of the dish with chopsticks, and fed it into Lu Sen's mouth. This is good. Okay. There is something, a mirror. However, the greed and intoxication in Lu Sen's eyes flashed away, and he instantly grasped the magic power that seeped into his mind. Occlumency activated. In a flash, the beauties in the mirror became blurry, and they all showed expressions of resentment, grievance, pity, and reluctance. It's like a wife discovers that her husband has done something wrong outside. That expression, those tears like rain-soaked pear blossoms, it's impossible to resist without some courage. Only after the image completely disappeared did Lu Sen sit on the ground, sweating profusely and gasping for breath. After a short rest, Lu Sen stood in front of the mirror again. This time, Lu Sen consciously tightened his mind so that the magic mirror could only see part of his heart, and made the magic mirror think that was all. The picture distorted for a while, and it seemed that it was impossible to monitor what Lu Sen's innermost wish was. But under Lu Sen's deliberate control, the picture gradually became clear. This is a modern room, not big, but filled with many figures and comics. A single bed, a computer with ordinary configuration. This is Lu Sen's home in his previous life. The person in the mirror is playing games. Although this was not Lu Sen's wish at all, Lu Sen blocked most of his mind and made this option the only one. So the picture became like this. The next step is to gradually let down your guard and let your mind run free again. The scene changed, and Lu Sen's home became spacious and luxurious, with blue sea and blue sky outside the window. This place has become a large villa with a sea view. Lu Sen in the mirror is still playing games, but his body shape has become perfect, his muscles are well proportioned, and he has become extremely handsome. Just as handsome as the reader who is reading the book. He has 8 watches on each arm, including Rolex, Omega, Vacheron Constantin, IWC, Patek Philippe, shining brightly. There is an 80-pound gold chain around her neck, and her fingers are covered with colorful diamond rings and gemstones. Lying on the big bed behind him are the Empress, Nami, and Nico Robin. The ones pouring tea are Haruno Sakura and Hyuga Hinata, and the ones playing games with him on his left and right are Asuka and Ayanami Rei. Clothes, cannot be mentioned, cannot be mentioned. What can I say about this illusion? It has flaws, but it's pretty good. Not bad, Xiao. After watching for a while, Lu Sen decisively activated the brain occlusion technique. The image in the mirror stopped abruptly. Lu Sen wiped the sweat off his forehead with satisfaction. Well, I do have great perseverance. After repeating this several times, Lu Sen was extremely exhausted. He staggered back to the dormitory and slept until noon before he recovered. In this way, he and Harry sneaked out of bed in the middle of the night for several days and went to the Mirror of Ariste to work the night shift. With the help of the Mirror of Ariste's efficient and intuitive instant feedback and the pure mind-reading magic without any personal involvement, Lu Sen quickly mastered the art of brain occlusion. And by utilizing the mirror's ability to provide real-time feedback, you can exercise your consciousness and control it freely. Lu Sen couldn't help but sigh that this magic mirror was simply a magical tool for practicing brain occlusion. However, after in-depth research, Lu Sen suddenly discovered a major problem. That is, how did the magic mirror know what Harry's family looked like? Almost all the illusions Lu Sen saw in the mirror could be found in his memory. So he can think that the principle of the magic mirror is very simple, that is, after the magic mirror reads people's innermost wishes, it materializes the scene. At the same time, make reasonable supplements to achieve a realistic effect. But Harry's situation is terrifying when you think about it carefully. He has never seen his parents, let alone his grandparents and many relatives. Even now it is difficult to find photos of his family. How does the magic mirror show that? Unless the mirror can call up ghosts from the underworld, or can cross the barriers of time and space and record the image of the characters. Thinking of this, Lu Sen took a deep breath. Isn't this Mirror of Eris a divine weapon? But as Lu Sen's research on legilimency and occlumency deepened, he finally uncovered the secret. So Lu Sen asked Harry what his mother looked like in the mirror. Harry answered this question without hesitation, because he would never forget the scene in the mirror. But when it came to the details, Harry was stuck. Green eyes or blue eyes? Red hair or blonde hair? Harry frowned and tried hard to recall, but soon he mixed up information such as his parents' hair color and facial features. That doesn't make sense. The image was there when I closed my eyes. At night. We'll go there at night. I'll tell you. At night, Harry still couldn't wait to run to the mirror, greedily enjoying the false family warmth in the mirror. Lu Sen asked again about the details of his parents' appearance, and this time, Harry answered all of them fluently. But he didn't realize that Lu Sen asked the question 3 times, but the answers he gave were not the same. In this way, Lu Sen understood everything. The magic mirror did not create any images, but the person looking in the mirror created the images. This thing is worthy of the name magic mirror. It materializes the desires in people's hearts. If the person looking in the mirror has a reference in his memory, he can use it. If not, it depends on the user's own imagination. The wonderful thing about it is that the user can't tell the difference between real and fake. Nor can they realize that there is anything wrong. The scene in the mirror is just like a dream. Sometimes we have very realistic dreams, where the things and characters in the dreams are exactly the same as in reality. But the fact is, everything in dreams is painted by the brain. Wherever you pay attention, the details there will be enhanced and drawn more finely by the brain. All unreasonable places in the dream will be subconsciously ignored, and this process will not be noticed. Therefore, the clearer and more complicated the dreams are, the worse the rest will be and the more tired one will feel. The same is true for the Mirror of Ariste. The more complicated your wish is, the more mentally taxing it is. The more details you pay attention to, the greater the load on your brain. The Mirror of Ariste has ruined many people, making them addicted to illusions, sitting in front of the mirror all day, and eventually becoming thinner and wasting their precious time. That's the principle. Chapter 56. It was another night, and Harry retired again in exhaustion in the second half of the night. Lu Sen had already sorted out his thoughts and continued his journey of cultivation. Lu Sen felt that he had practiced enough and the mirror had lost all threat to him. Relax, be read, activate occlumency, reset the picture. Search for a thief. But Lu Sen, who had relaxed his vigilance, did not notice that the person in the mirror actually revealed a strange sneer when he was not paying attention. Lu Sen, who was organizing his thoughts in front of the mirror, had not yet figured out what to let the mirror show in the next round, but when he looked up, he saw himself in the mirror taking out a gem with a faint red glow from his pocket. Lu Sen's eyes suddenly became hot, that was the magic stone. The scenes in the mirror changed rapidly, as if the fast-forward button was pressed. In the flashing pictures, Lu Sen's clothes became more and more gorgeous, and his status became more and more noble. He used the Philosopher's Stone to concoct the elixir of life, and also used it to turn large amounts of mortal iron into gold. After that, he rose rapidly to prominence, successfully acquiring unimaginable power step by step. Behind him, towering buildings and sci-fi style warships gradually emerged. His throne also moved from a mansion to a palace and then to a space mothership. Lu Sen gradually became addicted to it, and the magic stone played a key role in these scenes. Whether it was inexhaustible funds, or infinitely extended life, or even many scientific and technological research results, the magic stone was behind them. The Philosopher's Stone. I want the Philosopher's Stone. It's mine. In reality, bloodshot appeared in Lu Sen's eyes, and his expression gradually became distorted and hideous. When he saw this scene in the mirror, he immediately smiled with a look of success. But the next moment, Lu Sen, who seemed possessed, suddenly said with a sinister expression, "The ring is mine. My baby. It's my Preclaus." Lu Sen in the mirror looked down at the magic stone in his hand, with a bewildered expression. "What?" Black question mark face. Lu Sen regained his composure in an instant and said with a smile, "You should show the Lord of the Rings. You don't even know such a classic line? Do you need me to teach you?" Lu Sen in the mirror quickly conjured up more scenes of success and fame, but Lu Sen had already laughed and said, "You've been exposed, Xiaoer. I had already closed my mind at that time, but you created the illusion yourself. From the moment you moved, you lost. The mirror of Ariste is actually intelligent." Lu Sen had suspected this before. With the accumulation of magic power, many ordinary magic creations will develop intelligence, not to mention this powerful thing that is specifically designed to confuse people's minds. It's just that in the past few days, Lu Sen had played with the mirror in many ways, but he didn't see anything unusual with it. Even Lu Sen crossed out the assumption that the magic mirror has self-awareness in his notebook. In recent days, I have been practicing brain occlusion completely according to the idea that the magic mirror can only guide the user to describe their wishes. Fortunately, just before his mind was lost, Lu Sen subconsciously practiced the Chinese meditation method in his mind, which allowed him to retain a trace of clarity. The horror of the magic mirror is now revealed. Guiding wishes and materializing them is enough to deal with most people. But if your desire is not strong enough and your defensiveness is too strong, then sow desire, nourish ambition, and finally reap desire. Let the user fall into the abyss step by step. After realizing that the magic mirror was intelligent, Lu Sen was not afraid. Instead, he became more adept at using it. He treated this mirror that drove countless people crazy as an emotionless work mirror. Make the palace more magnificent. Make the weapons more dazzling. Your curvature engine looks like this. Can you pay more attention? Where are the details? Give me the details. Where is the detailed mechanism diagram? Look carefully at the blackboard. This is the known gravity acceleration equation. These are the parameters needed for derivation. Solve the anti-gravity equation for me. Quickly. This is my wish. Make it come true. At this moment, the mirror's inner thoughts, shame on you. Open your mind. Use your subconscious to solve it yourself. You're making me, a mirror, work in vain. Woo woo woo. Of course, the magic mirror can't give the answer to designing and solving problems. It's just a mirror. Even if it has devoured the thoughts and memories of countless wizards, something that doesn't exist at all is still difficult for a mirror. Lu Sen shook his head in disappointment. This time, the mirror of Ariste was really not threatening at all. It had become a painting assistant with its own AI. And it was an AI with a low IQ. Mirror, say it again. Are you polite? Just when Lu Sen was about to leave, a hand suddenly rested on his shoulder. Ah! Ghost! Lu Sen shouted in horror. When I looked closely, it turned out to be Headmaster Dumbledore. I remember you are the one who is least afraid of ghosts in the whole school. He blinked. Lu Sen thought that the illusion in the mirror affected his real senses, and he happened to be distracted just now, so he was frightened. It's you. I thought the mirror had become a spirit. Dumbledore stood in front of the mirror and said slowly, thousands of wizards have been fascinated by this mirror and have been unable to extricate themselves from the illusory scenes. But for someone like you to use the mirror as a training tool, I can only say that it really opens my eyes. Lu Sen felt a little guilty, haha. It's okay, mainly because I am a pure person and the mirror can't do anything to me. Mirror, aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning if you tell a lie? Your wishes are out of line. Dumbledore was so amused by such a shameless remark that he didn't know what to say. He turned his head to look at the backpack on the ground and said, I have been keeping an eye on Harry. He endured hardships that other children of his age did not have, and had no family and no happy childhood. I was worried that he might go the wrong way, so I turned a blind eye to his mistaken entry into this room. Mainly to let him have more good memories in his heart. Lu Sen thought, did we go the wrong way? Are you sure this wasn't arranged by you? Dumbledore ignored Lu Sen's strange look and continued, I originally only wanted to let Harry look at the mirror twice before moving it to another place, but I didn't expect you to find a special use for it. So I have been watching these days to see how far you can go. Lu Sen thought to himself, I have already mastered the art of brain occlumency. Wow, ha ha ha. But at this moment, Dumbledore tilted his head and winked at him mischievously. Lu Sen's hair stood on end, and he asked in a trembling voice, you, still know what I'm thinking? Dumbledore shook his head and said happily, I didn't probe your thoughts just now, but your thoughts are all on your face. Lu Sen was stunned, and touched his face in shock, a little unconvinced of what the principal said. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Principal Dumbledore for a few seconds to confirm, really? That's absolutely true, but your magical talent is indeed very good. You have learned the brain-blocking technique in just a few days. This is rare. Dumbledore praised sincerely. Lu Sen frowned and said, it's not bad. This thing is still very difficult to practice. I don't know if I can be considered to have learned it. As soon as the words fell, Lu Sen suddenly felt a throbbing in his heart, and a sense of alertness made his hair stand on end. He vaguely felt a weak detection force coming from Dumbledore. The brain block technique suddenly started to work at full capacity, blocking the detection outside his mind. Dumbledore said softly, very good. You don't have to worry about it. From now on, as long as you are not defenseless in front of outsiders, no one can see your heart without alarming you. As soon as the principal finished speaking, the prying power that Lu Sen felt suddenly disappeared. It was the principal who was helping him with the experiment. After Lu Sen experienced the pure power of telepathy, he felt a little relieved. But he was more confused, so he asked directly, but, Principal Dumbledore, you knew I was practicing occlumency these days, why didn't you stop me? Don't you want to see what I'm thinking? Dumbledore thought for a moment and said, Harry has his own destiny, but your appearance has given me more possibilities. I think, instead of pessimistically accepting the arrangement of fate, it is better to take the initiative to push the trajectory of fate in the direction we want. This is what you taught me. Right. Lu Sen understood something in his heart. Old Deng wanted him to help little Harry more. He saw hope in him. But facing Voldemort directly, he was unsure. At this time, Dumbledore returned to the mirror again. Lu Sen did not ask him what he saw, but if nothing unexpected happened, he should have seen Grindelwald or his deceased sister. Dumbledore sighed imperceptibly, and then said, for you and Harry, this mirror has completed its mission. I will move it to another place tomorrow. Remember to help me persuade Harry that it is useless to indulge in false dreams and forget the real life. Well, it's so late, old man, I'm going back to sleep. Lu Sen looked at his backpack, turned around and said, why don't you talk to him in person? But when he turned around, the principal had disappeared. Chapter 57. Dumbledore gave the task of persuading Harry to Lu Sen and ran away. However, Lu Sen touched his chin and told Harry the next morning, you won't be able to see the mirror anymore, don't be sad. It would be better to let him come out now to say goodbye and play for a while. Lu Sen did what he said and went down the stairs in the backpack and poked the sleeping Harry. But after being immersed in the illusion of the magic mirror for too long these past few days, Harry was already very tired mentally, and it was now the late night, so he slept very soundly. Lu Sen increased his strength and said as he shook, little Harry, get up, why are you sleeping? Get up and have fun. Seeing Harry opening his eyes with difficulty and still looking dazed, Lu Sen began to draw talismans. After a while, Chinese runes lit up on his hand and slapped Harry on the head. Harry shuddered and sat up. He felt as if a glass of cold water had been poured over his head. At the same time, his limbs and bones felt numb, and he instantly became alert. Woke up. What happened just now? It's so cold. Why am I not sleepy anymore? A refreshing charm. A must-have for staying up late. Just a simple touch of the charm will keep you energetic for the whole day. The effect is pretty good, right? I can draw more and sell them to seniors who are cramming for exams. I'll get more when I go back. Oh, by the way, come up with me, Harry. The two returned to the outside of the backpack, and Lu Sen asked Harry to stand in front of the mirror again. He told Harry that the headmaster had just left, and Harry asked with a little uneasiness, the headmaster didn't punish us, did he? No, but he asked me to tell you. Well, why don't I let you see it for yourself? Lu Sen said suddenly. Lu Sen walked to the mirror and stood with Harry. After adjusting his psychological defenses, he told the mirror what he wanted to see in his mind, and emphasized, "This is my wish. Be smart and make it come true." After being trained for many days, Jingzi was succumbed to the tyranny of the little devil Lu Sen and was forced to start a new round of work. From Harry's perspective, the image in the mirror began to change. Harry's parents and family members hugged and kissed Harry and waved goodbye to him. "Wait! Where are you going? Mom, Dad! Don't leave me!" Harry suddenly knocked on the mirror in panic and shouted anxiously. Immediately afterwards, Harry's family members emitted holy white light one after another, and bright halos appeared above their heads. Harry's tears immediately flowed down, and he stared blankly at his family members in the mirror floating up slowly. Above their heads, a mysterious and holy staircase appeared, with a golden door at the end. Harry's family members walked slowly towards the stairs with longing looks, turning back and waving to Harry every few steps. Their eyes were full of love and reluctance to part with Harry. Harry's grandparents were the first to pass through the door. The moment they stepped through, a brighter white light suddenly emanated from their bodies, and small white wings grew behind them. Harry understood that his family was going to heaven. When they arrived at Harry's parents' house, they hugged each other and cried, showing their deep reluctance to leave Harry. Harry couldn't bear it any longer, he shouted even louder, "Don't go! Stay! Don't leave me alone! Lu Sen, help me! Think of a way!" Lu Sen shook his head and said, "Harry, don't get excited, these are actually illusions." Harry was stunned, because as Lu Sen finished speaking, the scene in the mirror suddenly stopped moving. What's going on? Aren't they ghosts? Harry said in shock. Lu Sen then sighed and introduced, "Harry, this is the mirror of Air East. I haven't told you this because I wanted you to be happy for a few more days. But the truth is, the images in the mirror are all illusions. They are the wishes of your heart." Harry stared at his parents standing still and his family members who had ascended to heaven in the distance, without saying a word for a long time. At this moment, his heart was broken. Although he knew that the dead could not be resurrected, he had always thought that those were the souls of his parents and family members. It was the first time that they were so close to him. It was the first time that he was no longer alone. With tears in his eyes, Harry said angrily, "Why? You knew it was fake but you didn't tell me. You knew it a long time ago. Although it is an illusion, it is your inner wish after all. How can I bear to interrupt such a wonderful moment? However, it has been several days. It is time for us to say goodbye to fantasy and return to reality. Say goodbye to your parents properly, Harry. I believe you can do it." After saying that, Lu Sen took 2 steps back to leave more space for Harry. The scene in the mirror continued. After Harry tried to calm himself down, he looked at his parents and family reluctantly for a while. Then he waved goodbye to his parents and watched them step into the gate of heaven. Harry wiped away his tears, turned around resolutely, and dared not look at the mirror again. "Let's go," Harry said woodenly. Lu Sen patted him on the shoulder and said, "Harry, you did a great job. Only by saying goodbye to the past can you move towards the future. Never forget the warmth you have felt in the past few days. Illusions are false and cannot be taken away, but memories and feelings are real. This memory and warmth are precious memories that belong only to you." The light returned to Harry's eyes, but he was still very lost. Lu Sen continued, "Then this wish has come to an end. Do you want to try other wishes in your heart?" Harry shook his head. He was afraid that he would have to look back at his parents and family. He didn't know if he would be able to resist at that time. But under Lu Sen's assurance and persuasion, Harry tentatively went back to the mirror and took a look. Lu Sen standing aside had a cold look in his eyes, and continued to assign work to a working mirror in his mind. The picture in Harry's eyes changed. It was no longer the family around him or the online ascension. Instead, Lu Sen poked Harry with his arm, pretending that he didn't know what the picture was about and asked, "Harry, what do you see?" A smile reappeared on Harry's stunned face. "I have become mature and handsome. I think I am receiving the award. It's the bobsleigh race. I am the champion." At this point, he wondered, why not the Quidditch game? Lu Sen's eyes turned and he quickly ordered Jingzi to change the script. Harry immediately noticed the change and said, "I've been given a gold cup again. I'm the Quidditch World Cup champion. Wow! The World Cup scene is so spectacular. There are thousands of people cheering for me. It's incredible. But this is my wish. Lu Sen coughed and said, of course. The mirror of Ariste is the best at discovering people's inner desires. Absolutely accurate. The hand hidden behind his back waved at the mirror secretly and ordered, add details as appropriate. Be serious. Make it more beautiful. Do you have any imagination? Mirror, details, right? Okay. I'll add it. The scene changed again, and Harry said, there's another change. This time I was taking Hermione, and Ron, for a walk. And I was always, quite happy. He. Harry spoke haltingly, and then he blushed and glanced at Lu Sen beside him. Seeing the confusion on his face, I felt relieved. In fact, Lu Sen was a little confused. This mirror was so indecent. Bah! How shameless! Mirror, who are you talking about? I only arranged 2 people for him. You arranged 2 rows for yourself. Lu Sen, I can understand the mature and sexy version of Hermione. What the hell is Ron? Explain it. Mirror, my ancestral home is in Deying. Lu Sen, oh? I forgot, it's the UK. That's fine. Just go about your business. Mirror, it's strange to see something unusual. Lu Sen, tactic retreat. Chapter 58. The next day, Lu Sen asked Harry what he saw in the mirror last. But Harry always smiled and made up all kinds of excuses to evade the question and refused to say anything. Lu Sen was a little frightened, but he was also happy that his friend could get out of the sad illusion. With 3 days left in their vacation, the two decided to have fun. In the morning, we ate delicious food and played Muggle War chess. In the afternoon, we ate delicious food, went sledding, had tea with Hagrid, and ate delicious food together. In the evening, we even rode a broomstick for a while. At night, the 2 of them turned invisible and passed through the secret passage of the willow to go to Lu Sen's house to eat an authentic Sichuan hot pot. This time the furniture in the house had already been installed, so Lu Sen's parents enthusiastically forced them to stay at home overnight. Hermione returned to school early the day before the end of the holiday. When she found Harry at the ski resort and learned that he still didn't understand who Nicholas Flamel was, she was furious. An entire vacation. You just wasted your time playing games with boring people. Lu Sen coughed beside him, ahem. Hey. Do you think I don't exist? You can scold your boyfriend, but can you please not bring others along? Hermione and Harry looked at each other for a moment, then quickly avoided each other's gaze. We are not. What nonsense are you talking about? After being teased by Lu Sen, Hermione instantly put aside the matter of Nicholas Flamel. Instead, she showed a cute and fierce look, rolled up her sleeves and said viciously, by the way, I haven't settled the score with you for making up a story to deceive me before. It's just that school hasn't started yet. Let's settle the new and old scores together. The 3 of them were at the Black Lake competition field at this time. Seeing that the situation was not good, Lu Sen took 2 steps back, then turned around and ran towards the sled. He ran and laughed, come on. If you can catch me, I'll let you do whatever you want. Ha ha ha. But before Lu Sen could jump onto the sled, a voice came from behind him, flames are blazing. Lu Sen's hair stood on end instantly, and he quickly covered his head and crouched down to defend himself. After a burst of explosions, Lu Sen looked up blankly, his sled had been blown up. Murder! Are you crazy, Harry? You're still laughing. Can you please keep your girlfriend under control? I worked so hard to make this mark the 4th. Lu Sen said angrily. Hermione said viciously, if you dare to say that again, be careful that my hand shakes and you get blown up. Humph! Can you still call that junky thing of yours a sled? The one I built is 10 times better than yours. Lu Sen shouted, oh, really? But I'm the second. May I ask, what's your team's ranking? Lu Sen. Don't be so complacent. You're just lucky. Let's compete again if you have the guts. Hermione felt a little regretful after she said this, but she still stared at Lu Sen unwillingly, as if she wanted to overwhelm him with her momentum. Okay. Then let's compete on the spot. Who can finish a lap first? But there has to be a bet. Lucien said with a wicked smile. Hermione snorted, childish, and turned to leave. Lucien said calmly, if you win, I will tell you who Nicholas Flamel is. This sentence really worked. Hermione ran back in 2 steps at a faster speed and said excitedly, do you know who Nicholas Flamel is? Harry was also surprised and said, are you kidding me, Lucien? If you knew, why didn't you tell me earlier? Lucien dug his ears and said as a matter of course, I saw you guys were having a lot of fun so I didn't tell you. And you didn't ask me. Hermione clenched her fists, glared at Lucien, and then glared at Harry. Her eyes asked, why didn't you ask Lucien if he knew? Harry, you won't let me say it. Hermione was so angry that she kept stamping her feet and gritted her teeth and said, okay, okay. Let's make a bet, okay. Lucien shook his finger and said, I haven't told you what to do if I win yet. Hermione said impatiently, then tell me. If I win, let me kiss you. Lucien said seriously, as if it was as simple as giving him a piece of candy. Hermione and Harry were stunned. This was simply taking advantage of someone's misfortune. Hermione blushed, cursed, bastard, and turned and left. But Harry grabbed her and persuaded her in a low voice for a long time, finally making her change her mind and return to the field reluctantly. Then let's make it as simple as possible. There are no restrictions on making a sled. After it's made, you two can send a representative to drive it. Whoever finishes first will run first, and the winner will be decided in 1 lap. How do you think? Hermione agreed immediately, then rushed to the pile of materials and started making the sled. When Lucien walked slowly to the pile of materials, Hermione had already finished cutting the first piece of wood. A nice splitting spell. It cuts the big piece of wood in one go. It's almost the same as my cutting spell. Not bad. Lucien said as he crossed his arms and watched the fun. Hermione cast another spell, and several of the stacked pieces of wood were immediately firmly glued together. Although Harry had been cheering for Hermione, he couldn't help but ask, Lucien, why don't you start yet? Are you going to give up? Lucien yawned and said, I'm letting you guys go. I'm afraid someone can't afford to lose. Hermione, who was sweating profusely from working, immediately said angrily, who can't afford to lose? It's just a kiss, isn't it? I'm not a child. What's the big deal? I'll just treat it as being licked by a dog. Despicable. You would only think of such shameless things. She turned around and continued to wave her wand to create a sled, and said confidently, besides, I don't think we will lose to you. Humph. Do you want to compete or not? Or do you want to admit defeat directly? Lucien originally just wanted to delay for a while and ask Hermione to compensate him with a newly built sled, but since the other party was so confident, he also felt a little itchy. So he drew a talisman in his hand, stretched out his hand and grabbed, and took a piece of the scraps that Hermione had cut off. Harry? Hermione concentrated on assembling it. Lucien grabbed the wooden board at the corner, used Chinese magic, used his fingers as a pen, and quickly wrote a few spells. Then he stepped on it and made a sword gesture, go. Harry. Hermione, concentrating on enchantment. 5 minutes later, Hermione wiped her sweat and said happily, it's done. Come on, Harry. What are you still standing there for? Harry, this, maybe. Hermione, what are you waiting for? Hey? Where's Lucien? Speaking of Lucien, Lucien has arrived. He has already slowly flown back from the imperial wooden board on the other side of the track. Lucien jumped off the wooden board lightly, in a good mood. Knowledge is power. Looking at the two people who were stunned, Lucien smiled and said, why are you looking at me? This? Have you heard of the Chinese sword flying? It's almost the same idea. I just learned it. Hermione wanted to cry but had no tears. She said angrily, this is not fair. You cheated. Lucien spread his hands and said, I've already said there are no restrictions. You can even put your flying broom in there. This isn't a formal competition. Hermione lowered her head, her eyes a little red. Lucien hurriedly said, hey, don't be like this. I'll tell you directly. In fact, Nicholas Flamel is. Wait. Hermione bit her lip with tears in her eyes. She made up her mind and said resolutely, I will accept the loss. I always keep my word. You just want to kiss me? Humph. Shameless guy, just, kiss me. Chapter 59. After being interrupted, Lu Sen still listened to the other party's stubborn speech with great interest, but when she really closed her eyes with rainy pear blossoms, Lu Sen couldn't do anything to her. This girl is serious. Ah, this? Kiss or kiss? Mehahaha. Turning around, he saw Harry running around in a panic, looking at a loss. Lu Sen was shocked and thought to himself, bah! Lu Sen, ah Lu Sen, you are so shameless to steal your brother's girl. Forget it. Lu Sen signaled Harry with his eyes and made dazzling tactical sign language with his hands. But Harry was completely confused and couldn't understand a single move. Harry's black question mark face.jpg. Lu Sen showed a disappointed look, then laughed like a pervert and walked towards Hermione step by step. But when he passed by Harry, he pulled him over and pushed him in front of Hermione. Harry was stunned. This was the first time in his life that he had faced a girl at such a close distance. They are also good friends who go on adventures and compete together and are inseparable. For the first time, Harry blushed and found that Hermione was so cute. Especially when she closed her eyes and looked scared, wronged, and shy. Harry, his heart pounding, came to his senses and tried to step back, but was pushed on the head by a huge force. Boo! Hermione, ugh! My first kiss was taken away by a shameless person. But, it was still a little warm. I thought it would be rough. Pa! What was I thinking? Harry, this. Is this a girl's lips? They are too soft. Wait. What am I doing? Lu Sen quietly stepped aside, shook his head and sighed in his heart, ah. I am still not shameless enough. Forget it, I won't compete with my two good brothers for a girlfriend. Humph. Women will only slow down my speed of drawing the sword. The next day, in the common room, Ron, who had just returned to school, happily told everyone about his experiences in Romania. My brother took us to visit the dragon farm. I couldn't believe it. They had so many dragons. There were Norwegian Spinosaurus, Welsh green dragon, Ukrainian iron belly. Oh, Harry, I just noticed, there's a handprint on your face. Harry immediately lowered his head and covered the left side of his face with his hands, hesitating. This is actually, He thought quickly in his mind anxiously, but when he saw Hermione, who was reading in the corner, poking her head out from behind the book, his thoughts became even more confused. Lu Sen interrupted in time, it's a mosquito. Harry finally grasped at the life-saving straw and said happily, yes. A mosquito. It landed on my face. And then I slapped it hard. Ron blinked and thought for a moment, then looked at his thick clothes and asked in confusion, but now, it's winter. Harry was sweating. He looked at Lu Sen frantically for help and said, yes. Winter. It's because. Lu Sen said seriously, it's a snow mosquito. A rare magical creature. It has a low IQ but is stubborn and has a strong desire to win. Ron believed it and asked in amazement, there are such creatures? They can fly out in winter and bite people. Really? Not only is he good at biting, he's also good at being bitten. Is that right, Hermione? You read a lot, so tell me about it. Lu Sen said with a smile. Hermione poked her head out from the book, gave Lu Sen a secret glare, said softly, and immediately hid her head in the book again. But only Harry noticed that Hermione looked pretty with her blushing cheeks. On the first day of school, Hermione seemed to have forgotten about Nicholas Flamel. Whenever she met Lu Sen, fire would flash in her eyes. When she walked with Ron and Harry, she always avoided Harry and walked closer to Ron, which made Ron secretly happy. If the order of several people was disrupted when turning a corner and Hermione met Harry's eyes, both of them would turn their heads quickly as if they were electrocuted, and then large patches of red would appear on their faces. It wasn't until the third day when Ron suddenly remembered Nicholas Flamel while eating that he broke the awkward situation. The three of them blocked Lu Sen in the dormitory in a threatening manner. Lu Sen, who was sipping tea and practicing talismans, spat out the tea in his mouth. Hermione! Why are you here in the boys' dormitory? Harry, Ron, why did you bring her here? Lu Sen asked in confusion. Hermione hugged her shoulders and snorted, sorry, boys can't go into the girls' dorm, but there's no rule that girls can't go into the boys' dorm. Lu Sen curled his lips, he had forgotten this. But he quickly put on a smile and quickly tidied up the clutter on the table. At the same time, he asked knowingly, what brings the know-it-all student here? Hermione said viciously, what do you think? Don't tell me you don't know who Nicholas Flamel is. Of course I know such a simple answer. Any child who has eaten chocolate frog knows it. Don't be impatient. As he said that, Lucien took out the tea set and poured a cup for Hermione. Ron and Harry, who were standing by, skillfully took out their cups, came over and made a cup of tea each. It was the first time for Hermione to enter the boys' dormitory. She looked around with disgust on her face before taking 2 sips of tea. Then, the top student resumed his arrogant tone and said, okay, can we talk now? Who is Nicholas Flamel? Lucien smiled without saying anything, just looked at the other person silently, and only looked away after the other person's eyes became flustered. He smiled with satisfaction, then turned to Ron and asked, how many chocolate frog cards do you have? Ron was confused by this seemingly irrelevant question, but as a veteran card collector, he answered without hesitation, I have collected almost 500 cards, but I'm still short of Agrippa and Bartolomeo. Lucien nodded, then looked at Harry and asked, who is your first card? Before Harry could answer, Hermione put down her teacup angrily and pointed at Lucien, saying, you don't want to divert attention with such a lame topic. If you can't tell me who Nicholas Flamel is, I swear I will. What will you do? Are you going to bite me? Lucien interrupted Hermione, who was furious as a goose, and the other party's eyes suddenly turned red with anger. Hermione felt that Lucien must know nothing, so the game and her lost first kiss became a joke. Lucien broke out in sweat instantly. He didn't want to make the other person cry again. If the other person ran out of the boys' dormitory crying and was seen by his classmates, it would cause a big misunderstanding. He quickly said, okay, isn't that enough what I said? I'm really convinced. I won't date a girlfriend with a bad temper in the future, even if you give it to me. At this point, Hermione felt even more aggrieved. She covered her mouth and tears began to well up in her eyes. Lucien didn't beat around the bush and said directly, Nicholas Flamel is the greatest alchemist in history. He is the only one who created the Philosopher's Stone. Seeing Hermione was shocked and thoughtful, and had stopped crying, Lucien finally breathed a sigh of relief. He continued, Nicholas Flamel is over 600 years old this year. You certainly can't find him in modern history. But... As he said that, Lucien turned around and took out his backpack from under the bed, reached in, and pulled out a card that he had prepared long ago. The answer is already given on the chocolate frog, look here. It was a Dumbledore's chocolate frog card, one of the easiest to get. The moving Dumbledore on the letter had disappeared, but Hermione and the other two were completely attracted by the words on it. Dumbledore's well-known contributions include, defeating the Dark Wizard Grindelwald in 1945, discovering the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his achievements in alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel. Chapter 60. After figuring out who Nicholas Flamel was, Harry and the other two also understood what the three-headed dog was guarding the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is a magical alchemical artifact. This treasure can turn any metal into pure gold. It can also create an elixir of life, making those who drink it immortal. Nicholas Flamel just celebrated his 665th birthday. His wife is 658. Hermione and Harry were worried about the Philosopher's Stone, but they didn't know how to protect it, so they had to keep it to themselves. Ron, on the other hand, excitedly discussed the Philosopher's Stone with Lucien. What he valued most was the Philosopher's Stone's ability to create gold. He also mentioned a lot of things he wanted to buy. Finally, he excitedly said that if he had endless gold, he would buy a Quidditch team. But Lucien wanted a lot of things. Like his mother and uncle, he liked to buy real estate. With gold, he could buy land, build buildings, invest in research and development. Spending money was the easiest thing in the world. The new semester has begun, and what makes Lucien happiest is that he can use the Thunder Wand freely in Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick's classes again. But every time after class, the two professors would ruthlessly seal his wand again. Even though Lucien repeatedly assured him that he would not lose control and based his assurance on the fact that he had not done anything out of line in the past few months, Professor McGonagall still insisted on observing for a longer period of time. Lucien had no choice but to make the best of it and treat the Thunder Wand as a qualified learning machine and use the special effects of the seal chain to feel every bit of magic power running when casting. He also happily used it to brush up his proficiency in various magics. As soon as it was light in the morning, Lu Sen got up and went to the Black Lake to run, practice boxing, practice swordplay, and draw talismans. Sometimes he would pick up materials that he liked on the roadside and practice flying with a wooden stick or a tree stump. However, with Lu Sen's current magical reserves and proficiency, he can only fly slowly and at a low altitude, which is far from the flying broom. This made Lu Sen interested in the research of flight equipment. He made a special trip to call his father Lu Qiuzhong to exchange views. The father and son have always had broad ideas, and soon they talked about flying boots, flying carpets, and flying swords, and then talked about power armor, rocket backpacks, and individual power gliders. In addition to designing flying props, Lu Sen also had to do a boring thing. That was to teach the Magic Artificial Intelligence Central Processing Unit to learn. This thing was inlaid with the gem given by Dumbledore, and developed a faint consciousness under Lu Sen's self-created quick enlightenment magic. Lu Sen has been trying to teach it basic knowledge, but this thing, which looks very similar to a communication badge, currently has the intelligence level of a 4-year-old child. He can only teach it little by little. If he teaches it too much at once, the little guy will go on strike. Lu Sen is most afraid of work like coaxing children, and this job is also very time-consuming. So Lu Sen, whose time is precious, lazy, mailed the little guy to Lupin and asked him to find a suitable person with patience and time to take over the matter. Lupin took some time out in the evening to call Lu Sen. He said that he had pasted a piece of Chinese talisman paper on the last 2 full nights, and it was effective. He felt that the pain when he transformed was much less. Upon hearing the good news, Lu Sen expressed his happiness and told Lupin not to worry, as the Wolfsbane potion would be available as early as mid-next year. The next day, Lu Sen's communicator finally received new message. Fireball Dragon, hello? Lu Sen was stunned when he saw the signature, and wrote back, hello, who are you? How do you connect to my communicator? Fireball Dragon, I am the person responsible for teaching Little Tanuki. Mr. Lupin asked me to contact you. Lu Sen tilted his head and thought about it, then understood what the other party was talking about, so he sent a message. You are talking about the Magic Artificial Intelligence Central Processing Unit, right? I think it would be more appropriate to call it Xiao AI or Sai Rui. Fireball Dragon, okay, then let's call him Xiao Li. Lu Sen, which department are you from? Fireball Dragon, I'm the designer, what's wrong? Is the boss going to give me a bonus? Thank you, boss. Lu Sen, forget it, call it whatever you want. I have already taught it simple arithmetic and some simple vocabulary. What are you going to teach it next? Fireball Dragon, please call her instead of it. She has self-respect. Lu Sen, hi? Defining gender in advance. Are you politically correct? Fireball Dragon? What is correct? Lu Sen shook his head and couldn't help but send the joke that was used by later generations to satirize the deformed politics in Europe and the United States. He might be a graduate of pure wizard bloodline, how could he understand? So I wrote again, sorry, it's nothing. Gender doesn't matter, just tell me your next teaching idea. Fireball Dragon, this is very simple. What other ideas do you need? These days, I will read her the tales of Beetle the Bard, play the lyric game with her, and then play wizard chess. Lu Sen spat out a mouthful of water and immediately wrote, are you here to comfort the child? But after thinking about it carefully, I quickly deleted this sentence. This employee from the design department was personally selected by Lupin to be in charge of this matter. He must be a wizard with strong professional skills. So what he said must have a deep meaning. Telling fairy tales is to teach artificial intelligence grammar. Crossword puzzles, this is to strengthen the vocabulary and associative ability of artificial intelligence. Playing wizard chess is even better. It is to complement the logical thinking ability of artificial intelligence. Wonderful. As expected, a strong general has no weak soldiers under his command. What a talent! Lu Sen, who had figured out the key to the internal situation, praised with satisfaction, not bad. You are very smart. Work hard, I am optimistic about you. After waiting for a long time, the other party finally replied, okay. Lu Sen nodded, thinking to himself that this young man was pretty good. He was not proud even when praised, but focused on his work. In the following period of time, when Lu Sen had nothing to do, he would ask about the learning progress of his teacher Xiao Li. The employee of the communication name Fireball Dragon is also a person with an amazing brain. It is understandable that he reads newspapers and watches the Quibbler for Little Fox. But he can sing, talk about Quidditch, visit the company, draw pictures. Is there any deep meaning behind this? Lu Sen didn't ask Lupin either, not because he was worried that the Fireball Dragon would find an excuse to slack off, but because he was worried that if the other party had some deeper meaning, wouldn't he be laughed at if he asked? Teach as you like. Trust the people you employ, and don't employ the people you doubt. Time flies and it is February. After several optimizations, the company's first wizard chess game, Muggle War Medieval, is finally on the market. This game board fills the gap in the wizard game market and has been well received since its release. Not only do young wizards like it, but even adult wizards are also keen on it. Now the game Muggle Wars has become the new favorite in wizard pubs. You can see people fighting in almost all wizard pubs in the UK. The onlookers either lined up eagerly to play a few rounds, or simply started betting to see who would be the final winner. Thanks to this, the tavern's business was much more popular than usual. The cunning Lu Sen suddenly thought of the way a certain unscrupulous richest man, in later generations made money selling skins.